The Reverend Cox has sent his apologies, so Councillor Jackson is going to lead prayers. Thank you, Councillor Jackson.
Let us pray. Oh God, our Father, we thank you for the privilege we have of serving the people of Blackpool and those who visit us here. And we thank you for the privilege we have of serving our residents in this way, of meeting their needs and getting alongside them and helping them in the situations they are in. We thank you especially tonight for the life of Councillor Eddie Collett and the service that he gave to this town. We pray for his wife Heather and the family and ask your blessing upon them, that they may find comfort and strength by the friendship and the support that we give to them. I remember very clearly that on the occasions when I asked Eddie how he would always say, "Bloomin' marvellous." And that to me was Eddie. He was bloomin' marvellous. He was a good councillor, he was a good friend, and he was a good servant of this town. So we thank you, Lord, for his service, and we ask for your blessing upon his family. I ask the members if they feel able to share in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be his name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us, and deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Please be seated. Thanks. Thank you. Right, do we have any official apologies for absence? No? Item 1, declarations of interest. Nobody interested? Okay, thank you. Under announcements, I just have one announcement. At the last full council, it was agreed to give freedom of the borough to the Duke of Lancaster 4th Regiment. We've been in touch with them. They are very busy at the moment, and they have asked, could they have the council meeting, the special council meeting, next June during Armed Forces Week, which would be, I think, very appropriate. So if I don't think anybody has any objection to that. No, we will let them know that that will be the case. Thank you. Minutes of the last meeting on the 29th of June, pages... Yes, Councillor Owen. Thank you, Councillor Owen. Right, back to the minutes of the last meeting on the 29th of June. Are you all happy there, signed as a true record? Thank you, councillors. We move now to item 4, resolution of condolence for Councillor Eddie Collett. Can I ask you all first, please, to stand for a minute's silence to show our respect for Eddie? Thank you. And can I just say it is lovely to see Heather, Sean and David here, and for them to listen, and I know they'll hear how much Eddie was held in great esteem by everybody here. And I certainly have very fond memories of his great patience teaching me how to work a computer. And that took very great patience. And I think Eddie was known as somebody, certainly Eddie and I disagreed on many things, and we had some lovely debates, but like me, he believed that was it. You have a friendly debate and then it's over. And he was never any different. And I will always have very fond memories of him. Councillor Blackburn, to move the motion, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is really one of those occasions where it's very difficult to know where to start, because there is so much to say, and all 41 of us, as we are now, could all stand up and recount our tales of experiences and usually laughs shared with Ed, and some of his sort of weird and wacky views on stuff, which could keep us entertained, I'm sure, for hours. What I'm going to try and do is just sort of encapsulate some of the incredible aspects of Eddie's character, which were no more visible in the last few months and weeks of his life than they were throughout the rest of it. I met Ed in 2001 when I very unwisely, as it turned out, wandered into Gordon Morrison's office and asked if they needed any help. He was the sort of campaign coordinator stroke agent, so you know everyone in this room knows that everyone's got 4 different job titles in that sort of situation. But whatever his job title was, his job, apparently, was to just keep everybody calm, right? Because as you will all know, in that sort of situation, everybody, but not least the candidate, is flapping about like nobody's business. And if you ever wanted somebody to stop everybody flapping about and panicking and getting anxious and nervous, Eddie was the person. He would walk into the office and he'd reassure everybody that everything was fine and everything would be fine and they just needed to chill out a bit. I next came across him when I was first elected here in 2003 and was faced almost immediately with a very difficult planning situation in my ward, and my group very kindly responded by bunging me on the planning committee. So I had no idea what to do, as if we're honest, none of us do the moment we arrive. And there was huge pressure to vote in a certain way on this planning application. And I didn't know what to do. I had residents tell me one thing, as we all have, council officers telling me another thing. And Eddie came up to me after a Labour group meeting. We used to meet every fortnight on a Saturday morning. He came up to me and he just said, look, if you need to vote against this, it's fine. Don't ignore what everybody else is telling you, right? If you need to represent your constituents and you need to vote against it, just do it, right? Ignore them, it'll be fine. And I really appreciated that advice. Of course, Eddie was the deputy leader of the council then, and held the economic growth, tourism, regeneration portfolio at a time when we were going through the casino bid, as well as winning funding for all sorts of other projects that we sort of become used to now. But his role in that was absolutely crucial. And I meet with civil servants and council officers and other members from across the northwest and beyond, all of whom knew Eddie and respected the huge part that he'd played in fronting that massive national and international operation to try and drive forward Blackpool's regeneration. And there are countless other stories of his interventions over those years. Of course, he lost his seat, Madam Mayor, in 2007. And I wrote to him and said, you know, how sorry I was that he lost his seat. I expressed my hope that he would come back to the council and that he wouldn't do what he told me he was going to do, which was just grow his hair and buy a motorbike, right? And that he would come back. But I said that the thing that I would miss most about him was not having anybody to have a laugh and a joke with in Labour group meetings, and just that irreverent side of him was what made him the man that he was. He came back, of course, in 2011 and was highly sceptical of the new campaigning methods that we devised. And I said to him, he sat in several, what we call the LCF, the Local Campaign Forum meetings, and I said to him, I said, you look really hacked off. And he was like, well, he said, you do know none of this is going to work, don't you? It's not going to make any difference. They'll vote how they're going to vote, and all this is. I said, I know, but I really need your support and enthusiasm to get everybody else to believe in it. And as soon as I said that, I got it, right? And he was the first person to turn up at the leafleting sessions. He was the first person to turn up at the canvassing sessions. He was the one that would say, come on, let's crack on with it when it was raining and we all wanted to go home. So, and he was great like that. You know, even if he didn't truly believe in something, if he knew that his engagement with it was part of the greater good, he'd do it. And he went on to become one of the most enthusiastic campaigners that we had in the Labour group. He was forever trying to resign, right? I pointed him to the cabinet and he said, are you sure? And I said, yes. I told him what I wanted him to do. And he said, you do know my views on the police, don't you? Because I gave him the community safety brief. And I said, no, I know your views on the police, and that's exactly why I've asked you to do it. And 3 or 4 times that year, he said to me, he said, you know, if you want me to go so that you can get one of these younger ones in, it's fine. I don't want to be some silly old bugger bed blocking. And you really had to persuade him of his value, which we all knew, but Eddie himself in that sort of self-deprecating manner didn't, and was forever offering to sort of make way for somebody younger or somebody with new ideas. He was, of course, the mayor in 2013. That was a bit of a surprise, I think, to him and us and everybody else. But he did it in his own style and in his own way, and I don't think anybody else will ever do the job quite the way that Ed did it. But that sort of unusual and unexpected aspect of Eddie's character was, again, part of that complex mix of ingredients that made him what he was. He was devoted and dedicated to Waterloo Primary School. He steered them through the process by which they became an academy and has served there for, it's either more than 20 or 25 years. And is clearly known and loved throughout the school and its community. And that's not necessarily the sort of job you'd have associated with Ed, but he did it quietly, he did it incredibly effectively. And the new school hall, as people would have heard at the funeral, is going to be called Collett Hall in recognition of his efforts. When Norman Hardy died, Eddie volunteered to be the Labour group secretary, which again was a somewhat surprising moment and not a job anybody would have expected. It's not a job anybody wants to do, but you wouldn't have expected him to do. But he did, and he threw himself into it, did it in a completely different way to every other Labour group secretary, I have to say, but again, very effective. And also his views on civil liberties and freedoms, which were the things that we most often kind of clashed about. He'd had some interesting experiences which had forged those views. He'd been beaten up by the police as a younger man and remained very suspicious of the police till the day he died. He'd had his mail opened during the miners' strike. He'd headed up the sort of Blackpool Miners' Welfare Committee, and people used to send in postal orders for £1 or tins of soup, and Eddie used to collect these, and he said throughout that he had his mail opened and tampered with. And it was those sort of experiences which forged his position on civil liberties issues. And of course, Liberty UK was one of his mayoral charities. I bet that's the first time that's ever happened here. He was well known. I mean, he went through redundancy while he was deputy leader of the council. He had to find a new career, moved to Blackpool and the Fylde College. And one of the things we've all discovered over the past few weeks when knocking on doors in Tyldesley Ward is the number of his former students or people that he worked with or people that he knew, and he clearly made an impact on the lives of everybody that he came across. And not all of us can say that, I'm afraid. We've taken the decision, and I haven't announced this because I wanted to announce it tonight, one of the things we talked to Eddie, Graham, Gillian and I went to see Ed in the hospice, and one of the things we talked about was a demolition of the Queen's Park estate, because as discussed at some length in here, and as everybody in the room knows, he was a great fan of demolition. And he was asking when we were blowing the Queen's Park estate up, and we told him, and he said, well, I'm really looking forward to that, and unfortunately he didn't make it. So I'm delighted to announce that the new road which will form the spine of that estate will be called COLLETT Close. We went to see him in the hospice, and we had a really wide-ranging conversation, which was most of the time entirely inappropriate. And Ivan said to me, after he'd been to see him in hospital, I hope I have the same sort of attitude when my number's up, because he was just so completely not himself, and not in any way interested in himself or his own situation, but much more interested in those around him. We spent most of the time I was there talking about Heather and David and Sean. He told me that the reason that he didn't just pack up and give up was that he'd been in his relationship with Heather for a very long time, and that every heartbeat of it was worth it. And that just kind of summed up his attitude towards life. His main concern was that what we all took forward and what we all did after he died was to make sure that the family were looked after and they felt involved and included in the party, in the council, in the town, and that our friendship forged over many, many years, carried on, and it will. So we talked about bulldozers. We talked about what he wanted done with his ashes. He had 2 or 3 different ideas. One of them was, he asked us when the air show was going to be. So Gillian looked it up on her phone. Why? He said, well, you know when the red arrows go across? Yeah. And they've all that coloured smoke that comes out of the back. Yeah. He said, I quite like the idea of old women having to pick bits of me out of their teeth and their ice cream. So I said, well, we'll see what we can do, mate. I said, but we'll need to talk to Heather about that. He held true to his values even in those last days. You know, he was if you can have such a thing as a fundamentalist atheist, Eddie was one of them, right? So we had the humanist funeral. He used the co-op for his for the funeral service, and he was truly a sort of congruent individual. He was consistent even in his inconsistency, and that's something that I think as human beings we all strive to be, and we can all probably try a lot harder. Finally, Madam Mayor, we discussed, I spoke to him a few days before he died, and we discussed at that point a very important underpinning theory that I think I managed to get him to sign up to, which was that when David Bowie died at the start of this year, David Bowie was essentially the fabric of the world that held everything together, right? And when he died, everything started to go wrong, right? And we talked about all the celebrity deaths and marriage breakups and international catastrophes that they've been since that very sad day earlier on this year. And I think I sold him on that. And of course, Eddie shared with me and with many others, many on both sides of the chamber, a love of music and a very eclectic taste in music. And his car was always rocking from side to side when you drove past it, because he'd have the music turned up to the highest possible volume. He drove half of my stag party to and from York, and they got the full sort of karaoke, as he used to refer to it, the full works. Of course, David Bowie, there was a David Bowie album released very shortly after he died, which was written whilst he knew he was dying, as it happens from a very similar illness. The album was called Black Star. Something happened on the day he died. Spirit rose a meter and stepped aside. Someone else took his place and bravely cried, I'm a black star. How many times does an angel fall? How many people lie instead of walking tall? He trod on sacred ground. He cried loud into the crowd, I'm a black star. We'll miss you, mate.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. Do we have a seconder for that? Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Taylor. I do apologise, councillors. I've got my blurred vision this week. Councillor Clapham.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I came off the council in May 1991 when Eddie first took his seat in this chamber. Apart from a similar time out of office, Eddie has always been a continual presence on the Labour benches. We've travelled a parallel path, holding offices in children and young people, safeguarding, and recently served together on the Health and Wellbeing Board. I have always found Eddie easy to work with, and he was passionate in trying to improve the education and health of our residents. He was a good councillor and served as Mayor of Blackpool in his terms. Eddie had a sense of humour and was a man of few words, but always to the point. His abiding memory for me was at a Health and Wellbeing Board, where all the reports were discouraging up to that point. Eddie, being Eddie, he said, "This is a waste of time. We talk, but we never get anywhere." Then he announced he was off, and he went. He left early, and I never saw Eddie again after that. He just seemed to disappear out into the big beyond, almost like James Cagney ended his acting career. He did exactly the same. The world needs characters, and this council is a poorer place after losing Eddie, who had so much more to give if it had been given the chance. And it is a real shame it was taken so early and so quickly. It was a real shock to everyone on this council, for all of us, and the officers, no doubt. It is an honour and a privilege to speak on behalf of myself and the Conservative group in supporting this resolution of condolence. And our thoughts are always with you, Heather, and the family, and I hope everything does improve from here on. I know it's a great, great loss to you, but we're always thinking of you. And you can ring any of us, we'll all help you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clapham. Is there anybody else who wants to speak on this resolution? Councillor Taylor, yes.
I didn't want to miss an opportunity of saying something in tribute to my good friend Eddie Collett. And I'm so thankful for the personal friendship that I enjoyed with him, the little trips away we went together as families, little soirees at Heather's house where we gossiped about what was going on in the council. Great fun. But what I really want to talk about is his role in this council. Because, as has been said, Eddie had two great passions. One was in education, and of course, as has been said, he was closely involved as chair of Waterloo School, and he became the chairman of the Education Committee here, and portfolio holder for education, and then later on he went as a teacher to teach young people. And the other one was for regeneration. and he worked in the 1990s on regeneration in this country. And I think people don't always see the connection between those two, because there's a very, very strong connection. Because they are both about the future. And bringing our young people forward and helping them, and then in a physical sense, changing the resort and improving this town. And I think that Eddie was a futurist. That's what he dedicated his life to. And I don't think I'm being wrong to say that as far as the heritage stuff is concerned, whilst he recognised the importance of many of the buildings that we have in the town, it was not his, he was not the biggest enthusiast. And I remember some years ago, the council produced a list of about 50 or 60 things that were worthy of preservation. And I said he thought one or two were okay. But most of them he thought was worth little more than a visit from his favourite vehicle. I do remember, but his best period in this council was as deputy leader when he was in charge of regeneration. The master plan was Eddie Collett's plan. And I remember on one occasion, a councillor getting up and he was saying, look, the town's shambles. It's just like one big building site. There's all the traffic held up, there's roadworks going on, there's building sites on the promenade, whatever. He thought he was being critical of Eddie, but it was like a compliment to him. And when he got up to reply, he said, yeah, the member is right. He said, the town is just like one big building site, and I plan to make it worse. And I think, you know, the time will come when a member will get up in this council and will say very nice things in tribute to a councillor that's just died. We won't be here to hear it because he'll be talking about us. But I think if Eddie would have been allowed to write his own tribute in this council, I think what he would have been saying is this, and this is what he constantly said: don't spend too much time on the past, nor should you get bogged down in the little nitty-gritty of today, but keep your eye on the future. Keep your eye on the future of this town and its development and a way forward and making things better in this town and in this country. And I think that that is how he would want to remember. Now, none of us knows what it's going to be like here in 2036 or 2046 or 2056. But what we do know is what it's going to be like in 2036 or 56. It's going to depend on what we do here now in 2016. And I think if there's a message in all this that Eddie would want to put over is one of reinvigoration of all of us, to think again, to re-strengthen our commitment to this town, to think of the future, and to make sure that we play our part in making sure that for our children and their future is a much better one than we have enjoyed. And I think if we do that, the spirit of Eddie Collett will live forever.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Anybody else wishing to speak on the resolution? No? In that case, if we can take a vote, please, all those in favour of the resolution of condolence. We are unanimous. Thank you, councillors. And thank you for coming along, Heather, Sean and David. I know it's probably been upsetting, but I hope it's made you realise how very much we all thought of Eddie and how very much he'll be missed here as well as by you. Item 5, public representation. We have Mrs. Pauline Duncan, who's come to speak. Mrs Duncan, you're very welcome to the council chamber. The officers have explained to you that you have 5 minutes to speak. When the green light comes on, that's when you've had 4 minutes. And unfortunately, when the red light comes on, that's when you've had your 5 minutes. Councillor Blackburn will respond. Nobody else can respond afterwards. So if you're happy, please do speak to the council.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Pauline Duncan. I'm 62 years old and Blackpool born and bred. I'd like to thank Madam Mayor, the council and members for giving me this opportunity to talk briefly about the WASPI campaign. Started by 5 women who met by chance on social media, the campaign highlights the way the 1995 and 2011 Pension Acts have resulted in a generation of women born after the 6th of April 1951 being grossly disadvantaged. Many have been left impoverished and dreams of a stress-free later life dashed. Through social media, they spread the word, encouraging women to speak out, and so we grew. The acronym WASPI stands for Women Against State Pension Inequality. This does not mean we are against the equalisation of the state pension, not at all, but we are against the unfair way the Acts have been implemented and the lack of fair notice given to the 2.7 million women and their families affected. Over 4,000 women from Paul Maynard's constituency, Blackpool North and Cleveland, and over 3,600 from Gordon Marsden's constituency, Blackpool South. We do not apportion blame to any political party, and we are proud that after 4 debates, the recently formed all-party parliamentary group has over 140 MPs from 6 different political parties, including the MP for Blackpool North and Cleveland, Mr Paul Maynard. Also, Gordon Marsden spoke out in our favour in the Commons debate in January this year. The APPG remains steadfast in trying to find a solution to this injustice. Their next full meeting is arranged for October this year. Now, a short but important summary of events. The 1995 Pension Act increased the state pension age to 65 for any woman born after the 6th of April 51. Unfortunately, no one contacted these women directly to inform them. Freedom of information documents acquired by Paul Lewis from Moneybox has substantiated this. There were arguments that tiny articles appeared in some newspapers, magazines, and a mention on a news programme. In 1995, I know exactly what I was doing. With a husband who worked away, a part-time job, a 9-year-old daughter, a 19-year-old son, a cat, a dog, and an elderly mother to care for, I was far too busy for newspapers and exhausted long before the late-night news. They should have sent me a letter. Now fast forward to 2011. This time the government decided to accelerate the SPA for women to 65 by 2018, plus increase to 66 for men and women by 2020. This despite the promise made by the coalition government in 2010. They ignored recommendations from Saga and the Turner Commission to give a minimum of 10 years' notice to those affected. Letters started going out in 2009 to some, but those women affected by both acts, the worst affected, born after the 6th of December 53 to the 5th of October 54, did not start going out until 2011. This included myself, unfortunate enough to be born in August 54, and I will be 40 days away from my 66th birthday before I receive my state pension, after paying in for over 35 years from the age of 16. My letter arrived in February 2012, 2 years before I expected to receive my state pension, and certainly not enough time to plan for the 6 additional years I will have to wait. Indeed, some women received as little as 1 year's notice or never received a letter at all. And also, the acceleration meant that a year's difference in age could mean 3 years' difference in SPA. So what impact have these new laws had on women? For me, a loss of over 37,000 from my household. I took early retirement as a necessity as my daughter's mental health meant she would need care and support that I was unable to provide whilst working, and so I became an unpaid full-time carer. I have no personal income and rely totally on my husband to support me. Due to the current economic climate, he has, over the past 16 months, been forced to accept a wage cut of 5% and then a further 10% to ensure he stays employed by his company. He has also lost expenses and bonuses as a necessity for the company to stay afloat. This has put an even bigger strain on our family, both financially and personally. For others, I can quote example after example of women who, through no fault of their own, are in dire straits. They have full national insurance records, yet are ineligible for any benefits or support. Women who gave up work to look after terminally ill family members or were made redundant now find they are ineligible for benefits. Even the JSA only lasts 6 months with little prospect of a job. Women on the job seekers programmes have been humiliated by what they're expected to do. Learn how to dress appropriately for an interview. Write a CV but don't put your age. Job offers to stand out in bitterly cold weather handing out leaflets, or even sent on physically challenging work experience which they are unable to complete. One woman with no experience of computers was sanctioned for not completing enough job applications. She had no computer and no bus pass, so had to walk 5 miles to the library. And of course, without a bus pass, you have to find money for your fares or fuel to attend programmes, or you are sanctioned again. The bus pass is a bone of contention that crops up time and again in conversation with women only a few years older than me, who have their state pension as well as everything that comes with it.
Mrs Duncan, I'm sorry, the red light is on. Could you say a last few words to finish off?
Okay, I can do. Okay. We live in hope that the government will take note and put in place transitionary arrangements for our generation before it's too late. To date, 28 councils have been asked to submit a motion to the government supporting the WASPI campaign, with 100% agreeing. I am here today to ask for the support of Blackpool Council to help us to try to achieve this. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Sorry to cut you off in your prime. Councillor Blackburn to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I'd like to thank Mrs Duncan and her colleagues for taking the time to come and speak to us tonight, and for the emails and communications I know they've had with a number of members. I'm sure that you will be pleased to note that the Labour group have a notice of motion on tonight's agenda to lobby the government, as you suggest. I am very hopeful, not to say confident, that that motion will pass. And it's entirely up to you whether or not you want to wait until the end of the meeting to find out, or if you want one of us to email you tomorrow and let you know. But yeah, we're fully supportive of what you've got to say. We would like to thank you again for taking the time and trouble to contact us and to come and say it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. As Councillor Blackburn says, you are very welcome to stay. I don't pretend we're the most entertaining show in town, but you are, or if you do wish to leave now, by all means, please feel free to do so. It's up to you. Right, we move on to item 6, the executive reports. And first of all, 6A, the Leader of the Council, Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I present my report, and I'm happy to answer questions on it. I'm particularly excited about questions tonight, I have to say, Madam Mayor, because Councillor Galley has adopted the Jeremy Corbyn approach to this and has taken to Facebook to invite people to put forward any questions that they would like him to ask. Because as we know, he struggles for inspiration and he doesn't get to his feet very often. So it will be nice to hear questions from Anne of Cleveley's and various other people. Unfortunately, now, sadly, Councillor Galley and I are not friends on Facebook, which is something I must rectify at the earliest possible opportunity. However, one of my colleagues is, which has meant that I've been able to examine this Facebook feed to try and discover what kind of questions might be heading my way. And interestingly, they're almost all from the other members of the Conservative group. So why they are channeling themselves through Councillor Galley, we will have to wait and find out. But just to give you an insight into the level of forensic inquiry which is about to go on, Councillor Robertson claims that we are allowing beggars on the streets of Blackpool in order to make debt repayments on our council debt. So I'm looking forward to the piece of procurement documentation that Councillor Robertson has clearly found to demonstrate that that which is clearly nonsensical, and I can only assume must be some sort of joke, is a sort of statement that one would want to put out into the public sphere. So I look forward with interest to questions from Councillor Galley and the other colleagues who want to channel their questions through him because they don't want to speak for whatever reason. On a more positive note, Madam Mayor, I have come this afternoon along with Councillor Taylor and the Chief Executive from a policy school event set up by the DCLG, where we've had 30 of the sort of bright young things, the fast streamers from the civil service, have come up and spent 2 days here in Blackpool, and they've done a detailed examination of the circumstances of the town, particularly referring to our housing market and our housing issues here. And they've spent all afternoon making presentations to us to tell us what they've found out, but also what they think we, along with the government, can do about it. And it's one of the single most positive experiences I think I've ever had. There's so many people with so much expertise sat in a room, touring around Blackpool, meeting community groups, going out onto the streets and talking to residents, and then feeding back to us and telling us what we should be lobbying the government for. Absolutely fantastic, really positive, and I look forward to reporting much more back over the next 12 months, Mr. Mayor. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. I'm rather surprised if you're inviting bright young things that I didn't get an invite. I will take questions and comments page by page. Page 9, any questions? Oh, good grief, hang on, let me get my pen. Councillor Maxine Callow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The customer first and the impact that the Green and Go campaign has had on this. Did we not realise that when we started this Green and Go campaign, that it would actually cause a lot of problems with the customer first service? And I would just like to ask the leader, how many people in Blackpool have now paid in to the green bin scheme? I have, but a lot of my neighbours say as a matter of principle they're not going to. But of course we have paid into it. But surely didn't we realise that there would be a great problem, because it has caused an awful lot of concern with the residents who say it's just a matter of principle that they're having to pay this extra money. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
It's on the same subject, but it's at the call centre. I mean, I've had more than one phone call about the 447, but people can't get through to it. And I wonder whether we could come up with a different solution to perhaps an answer system where people can leave whatever complaint they've got with them, and they can get back to the people who are ringing up. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Callow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to speak about council tax, and in particular a gentleman who's asked under the Freedom of Information Act a request about councillors on whether or not they've actually paid their council tax, whether they were in arrears of council tax, this sort of thing. I don't intend mentioning anybody's name. That's for them to decide. But people have missed council tax payments, councillors, and the answer from the council was, the council's original response was that 9 councillors had been given reminders, 3 had been summoned to court. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not. However, one of these cases did go ahead, and that one case resulted in a councillor being barred from voting on the budget. And he's saying again, you will note from my request for a review of the council's decision that I specifically asked for you to consider naming the 3 councillors who were summoned to court. However, your reply only dealt with one of these. I am assuming that was the one that went to court and who was barred from voting on the budget. Now he's saying, name the other 2 councillors. Now, the point I'm making is that there are people in this town, pensioners, people on low wages, who are struggling to pay their council tax. And here it would appear that we have councillors who are not paying their council tax, who are missing payments, and that cannot be allowed to happen. The fact of the matter is the public will go mad these people on low incomes in Blackpool, the pensioners as well, they're struggling to pay. Councillors are in positions of authority. They look after the council tax of this town, and so why are they not paying their own council tax timelessly? This is, if this is right, then it's particularly wrong that they're allowed to do this. And I'd like the leader of the council to give us some sort of reply. This chap's been trying to get this information, which he's entitled to, since May of this year. Okay, and I think he's being stalled. The fact is that that shouldn't be. Let's sort it out. If councillors don't pay their council tax, then this is a problem, a major problem. We've all had hard times in our lives, but you pay your debts first.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments on page 9? Page 10. Councillor Tony Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm always reminded when Councillor Blackburn makes his opening statement of something one of Britain's greatest politicians once said. A politician that was held a record of being the longest Prime Minister in the 20th century. And she said, when you have to revert to insults, you don't have a political argument. And I think those words are very true. But I'd like to ask about the Lancashire Combined Authority, Madam Mayor. We realise that this is now going ahead, that Councillor Blackburn will eventually be the Lord Mayor of Lancashire, and we'll suffer under another layer of bureaucracy. However, as the meetings are starting, are we going to see the full list of minutes of this meeting and the details? And can I also say that I have spoken to my colleagues across the county, and not everything is quite as it would seem. I'm standing for independence, Madam Mayor, because if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Councillor Maxine Callow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of subjects on page 10, if I can. The same subject that Councillor Williams spoke on. Do the councillors that are on this shadow combined authority, are they given an allowance? Are they paid expenses? And how much is this costing to the council taxpayers of Lancashire? And then if I can just turn to the Growth Deal 3 and the report that Blackpool's put in a submission for some 15 million for a conference offer at the Winter Gardens. I do welcome this very much indeed, Madam Mayor. I really do. And I do hope that we are successful. But I'm just wondering, Madam Mayor, if at the moment we're still aiming to get political conferences here in Blackpool, whether they're large or small. And I do appreciate that the Labour Party have brought one of their spring conferences, I think, if not an autumn conference. I'm absolutely ashamed to say that my party have turned their backs on Blackpool and most seaside resorts. And we're the people of the country that actually need these conferences. And Blackpool does need political conferences because you get the right people coming to the town, and I may sound as though I'm a grabber, but they spend their money here. We get the publicity on the television that we couldn't buy. And I do hope that we haven't just sat back because we haven't got perhaps the facilities that some other areas have got and said it's not worth going for these conferences. We must keep on the battle. And I do hope that Blackpool is successful on this. They've got my absolute support. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Galley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I had a question about the combined authority, but before I comment on that, Madam Mayor, I couldn't let Councillor Blackburn's point go. It was too good to resist. No, it was a good point. I do worry, though, Madam Mayor, about just how much time the leader of this council actually has. From we hear a few councils ago, he's obsessed with Councillor Williams while he's flying back from somewhere, and now we hear he's like obsessed about my Facebook page and is reading it avidly. And I'm actually pleased he is reading it avidly, Mr. Mayor, because on there he's probably going to find out an awful lot about what the people of this town think about his council and the way it operates, and in some cases the way he doesn't operate, in terms of the way some of our key services aren't being delivered. And so I'm really pleased he's reading it, and I really will encourage him to continue reading it. In fact, I will be sending him a Facebook request, and then you won't have to go through the trouble of hearing it from Councillor Smith. So that was my main point. But the key question I wanted to ask, Madam Mayor, was actually on the subject of the combined authority. When we had the vote about the authority and its role, we were told that it was to, as I understood, to give permission for us to investigate and explore further, and that we would have a further vote before we actually entered into that partnership. So I just wondered if we will be having that vote, if members will have that vote, and also if the information will be provided to actually what we're about to join. Councillor Blackburn promised us that we would be having, or in his wishes, that he would really wanted to join if he could get control of housing benefit. So will we be actually seeing that power in this? Otherwise, what are we joining? Is it something that's in Blackpool's interest or Councillor Blackburn's interest? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any further questions on page 10? Right, we'll go on to page 11. Councillor Williams.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I would like an update, if I could, in a bit more depth than given here on Blackpool Museum. It seems to be moving extremely slowly. Yet to date, I note, we have spent £257,000 on consultants, yet we don't seem to be a brick further ahead. Could we elaborate on that, please, Madam Mayor?
Thank you. Any further questions on page 11? And page 12, any questions, comments? Any other question? Is that page 12, Councillor Williams? Right, we're now on to that. Any general questions or comments? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My colleague, Councillor Galley, referred to the time that Councillor Blackburn spends thinking about me on aeroplanes, etc., etc. And I was interested to read what the decision was on the financial plan presented to the executive this Monday, and also surprised to see that neither the leader or the deputy leader were there doing council business. Excuse for that. But when I checked further back, it would appear that I would presume that the executive meeting, Madam Mayor, is one of the most important meetings this council can have every week. It's where decisions are made and brought to council for ratification. Important decisions. But I was disappointed to learn that out of the last 8 executive meetings, the leader, who was the chair, has only attended 2. And I presumed, and I give him grace on this, is that obviously his work with the LGA, which I think he's doing a sterling job, by the way, and that's not being sarcastic, I think he is, would be taking him away from that. But when I look at the attendance records of the LGA, it would appear that the committee meeting, the councillors' forum, there were 5 in 2015, and the leader only attended 1. So perhaps we should move the date of the executive to suit the leader's timetable, Madam Mayor.
Any further general questions or comments? Councillor Humphreys. Sorry, I'm having trouble seeing the back.
That's all right.
Is it you?
I am quite small. I'd just like to ask that I will, first of all, mention that though things move sometimes slowly in the development of Blackpool, but I'm very proud to say that the Palm Beach development of the flats in Squires Gate has gone ahead. But I'd like to ask whether we have a time scale of when the old building is going to be demolished. Thank you very much. Sorry, on the
Questions or comments? No? Right, Councillor Blackburn to reply.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Councillor Mrs Callow, we did realise that it would require some extra capacity to handle the phone calls for the is it Green and Go campaign? We did realise that, but we didn't realise it would be such a runaway success. So I can tell you that over 10,000 people have now signed up, and I thank you for your solidarity and support. Councillor Brown, you might have noticed that we've had some cuts from the government since 2010, and customer first has been one of the areas to suffer, as I've reported on meeting after meeting after meeting. Everything takes far too long. It takes too long to answer the phone. It takes too long to process benefit claims, and it's an unacceptable state of affairs. But there's a limited amount of money to go round. One of the things we did do, however, as you may recall, is not only have we protected Blackpool's library service, but we reopened 2 libraries that your last administration closed, meaning that there's plenty of publicly available computers for people to go on and make their inquiries online. Failing that, perhaps they should ring you. Councillor Callow, one case went to court. That councillor is now fully paid up. Councillors are human beings. They are representative of the population at large. Councillors have personal problems, which neither you or I or the person who submitted that freedom of information request can possibly be privy to. They are human beings. They make mistakes. They have problems with their banks. They have relationship issues. They have financial issues. One person, they can't just behave however they like, as you suggest. They are subject to exactly the same rules of society as everybody else. The only additional rule is that if they are not up to date with their council tax, they can't vote in budget council. That was the case with one member. That member wasn't allowed to vote in budget council and is now fully paid up. My answer to this, no matter how many times I'm asked it, is going to remain the same. Councillors are human beings like everybody else. They make mistakes like everybody else. They have financial problems like everybody else. Councillor Williams, the Combined Authority, I look forward to getting fitted with my feathery hat as Lord Mayor of Lancashire. Can assure him, this is a long-standing joke between myself and the deputies, I can assure you that we will remain fiercely and proudly independent. It is greatly in the interest of Blackpool to be involved in this, as Councillor Mrs Callow very helpfully brought our attention to in her question. Firstly, let me reassure you that office holders, even ones such as grand as I, do not get paid for their role on the Combined Authority. It costs us nothing. That will change, right? There will have to be, not the us getting paid bit, I very much doubt that will change. But we will start to have to make more and more of a contribution to the Combined Authority once it hopefully gets up and running in full form. But that will be to the benefit of those who are prepared to invest the resource. It is hugely to our benefit to sort out the housing problems of Lancashire. It is hugely to our benefit to make sure that we bring in skilled jobs in the energy industry, in the aerospace industry, in advanced manufacturing. And those people who are prepared to make a contribution to that effort will be the one to reap the rewards. I'm pleased that she recognises the value of Growth Deal 3. I have to say that our involvement, being at the heart of the Lancashire Enterprise Partnership and being at the very heart of the Combined Authority, all help when it comes to things like this, to making Blackpool's case. If we did what Councillor Williams would have us do and sit in here in splendid isolation and not be involved in any of these things, I find it very hard to believe that out of a list of 29 projects, Blackpool's 7,000 capacity conference centre, not 1,500 as Councillor Williams thinks it is, because he didn't realise it was next to the Winter Gardens, our 7,000 capacity conference centre wouldn't be in the position, I'm happy to tell Councillor Mrs Callow, to receive an inquiry from one of the main political parties about staging their national conference here in 2019. Updates will follow. Pleased to say that as well as the spring conference, the Labour Party is about to host its North West Regional Conference here for the 5th successive year. Councillor Galley, I know what people think. I'm not reliant on your Facebook feed, but I have to say it's amusing diversion from some of the other roles that I have. We've had 2 votes on the Combined Authority already. Subject to the successful conclusion of devolution talks with the government, subject to a parliamentary order being prepared and laid before Parliament in the spring, I would anticipate a final vote here as to whether or not we join the formal Combined Authority, and I can get my head measured for the hat. Councillor Williams, the museum is moving at exactly the right pace. Yeah? I've been very, very clear about this all along. If it's the right thing to do, we'll do it. If it's not the right thing to do, we won't do it. The museum has to work alongside everything else that happens at the Winter Gardens. We have to make sure that the museum doesn't negatively impact on the Winter Gardens' ability to make money. And of course, we're currently in a bidding round for a conference centre to go on the side. That, of course, would have a further impact on the museum, where it would go, how it would work, what the footfall would look like, and what its expected visitor numbers would be. We are well on track for the next Heritage Lottery Fund Gateway review. I'm perfectly satisfied with progress. As Councillor Humphreys pointed out, Madam Mayor, sometimes these things take time, but it's important that we get it right. Councillor Williams, I completely disagree with him, right? Executive here is probably one of the least important meetings that we have. And having sat on a number of executive meetings when Councillor CALLOW was the leader, and when you were on the executive, I also know that when you were in power, they used to last about 3 or 4 minutes as well. Because, of course, as you would anticipate, we as a Labour group and we as an executive have already discussed these matters in great detail. Just for his reference, though, on the day in question, I was chairing the LGA Safer Stronger Communities Board and then having a one-to-one meeting with Lord Porter of Spalding, who is the Conservative chair of the LGA. Likewise, the Councillors' Forum meeting is an opportunity for councillors who are not otherwise involved with the LGA to attend, to take reports from executive members such as myself. The far more important meeting, which he should have been looking at, takes place immediately after that, which is the LGA executive meeting, and with the exception of this month, where I couldn't attend because I was on council business here, I have a 100% attendance record. You don't get paid for being on the Councillors' Forum or the LGA executive. Councillor Humphreys.
Councillor Blackburn, a point of order.
Point of order. You don't get paid. I do beg your pardon, but I understand. You get an allowance. When I asked this question some time ago in full council...
I'm sorry, this is not a point of order.
Nonetheless, Madam Mayor, I'll answer it. Councillor Williams doesn't listen. Councillor Williams doesn't listen. What I said is people don't get paid for attending the Councillors' Forum and they don't get paid for attending the LGA Executive. Both of those statements are true. If he looked at my declaration of interest for him with any amount of interest, if he read the press statement that I'd sent out to the media at the time in advance of the criticism which I knew was coming my way, he would know that I receive an allowance of just over £16,000 a year to chair the Safer Stronger Communities Board. I repeat, I do not get paid for either of the things he's asked a question about. Councillor Humphreys, returning to much more sensible matters, I too was delighted to see that we've finally made some progress on that development. It's a really good example of the council working with a private developer. Planning permission can always be a bit painful, but you know the planning committee's got a job to do. They've got to accurately represent the views of residents and businesses and those in the surrounding area. Unfortunately, the state of the building is such, the state of the building is such that some of the asbestos from the roof and the ceiling area has become mixed in with the rest of the general rubble on the site. So it's going to take a specialist firm to do it. So we're monitoring it at the moment as best we can with our security. But I'm told that demolition proper will start at some point in October. It is interesting, though, isn't it, that there was some criticism of that development from Councillor Williams, because he says it's the wrong end of town for a hotel. Wrong end of town. South Shore, wrong end of town. Okay, interesting. So, we've talked about plans to build a hotel near the station, Blackpool North Station, in fact. And part of Councillor Williams' critique there is it's the wrong end of town. Now, bearing in mind that our neighbours to the west have gills, and there's only so many possible ends of town to be talking about, if South Shore is the wrong end of town, and Blackpool North is the wrong end of town, I wonder what end of town is the right place for a new development. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. Move on to 6B, the report of the Deputy Leader on Tourism, Economic Growth and Jobs. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Happy to take questions on my report, but just a quick one, something that's not actually in my report, was about this year's Switch On. We've had an extremely busy summer, and the Switch On event is looking like the best one we've had in years. Sorry about that, Graham. And due to 20,000, definitely 20,000, and due to popular demand, we've opened the ballot for wristbands early, and we've already had applications for over 8,000 wristbands. We've obviously still got the fireworks championships, and if you haven't seen it, can I suggest that you go along to the promenade this Friday or next Friday, which happens to be my birthday as well, and they're doing fireworks for me, which is really nice. But I'd just like to say thank you very much to all of the staff who've been involved in the Switch On week, as it was. I was absolutely exhausted. Goodness knows how they felt. The Ride the Lights and all the launch of Light Pool and the Grundy Art Gallery exhibition and all the various things we did that week. And of course, the Nickelodeon Slime Fest, which was the first one in the UK. It was an absolutely amazing week, and I'd just like to go on record to thank all the staff who were involved in it. They did an absolutely fabulous job. And happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. We'll start on page 13. Questions or comments? No? Oh, sorry, Councillor Clapham. No, I'm sorry, my eyes are really bad tonight. If I miss you, stand on your chair and wave both arms. Sorry.
It's Plymouth Road Bridge. There was a great deal of fears, certainly from the residents, that travelling in that direction on Bispam Road to Plymouth Road roundabout was going to be a nightmare. But it does seem there are so many people avoiding it that the traffic is flowing greater now than it ever has done in decades. So I thank you for that.
Thank you. Page 14, questions or comments? Councillor Galley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Two positive comments and a question. Firstly, I want to echo brilliant fireworks. I've been to a few now, and they are all too brilliant. Very, very good and very, very popular. So huge well done as well. The other is just to say thank you. I noticed poor John's there sat on his own tonight, and so just to say a big thank you to John's team again on the work that's been done on the Anchor's sea defence scheme. The liaison with the residents, both in terms of the sea defence, the highways team and so on, has been absolutely superb. So it was just a moment to say a big thank you to the team. The question was about the intelligent traffic management system. Excellent piece of software, and I just wondered if it will actually be going into an app that people can actually access real time, so they don't just have to see it on a sign as they enter whilst they're driving, but they can actually see it pre-planned as they're driving before they arrive in Blackpool. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any further questions or comments on page 14? Councillor Brown.
Just to echo Councillor Callow said about Plymouth Road Bridge. I think the people who are doing the work there should be congratulated on the efficiency of running the...
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions? No? Page 15, questions or comments? Councillor Clapham, I saw you that time.
So I'll have to have a higher chair, one thing or the other.
Longer arms.
Longer arms, all right then. It's the usual thing, it's about contracts. First of all, it looks a better balance than it's been for quite some time in terms of companies in Blackpool and in Lancashire compared to elsewhere. So you need congratulating on that. I'll get whipped to death later, but never mind. But seriously, could there not be a column in there to show how many companies for each contract actually applied, you know, that tendered for it? We don't need any details, but it would be nice to know. I mean, for instance, we had an email sent out today by Lennox about a contract on the health side, and although they sent things out to 7 different companies, only one applied, which gives you a good enough reason as to why there was only one person got it, etc. But that would help, and then you could see what sort of demand there were for each category. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Galley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question on the public space protection order. I just wondered when the one in parks will come into force. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any further questions, page 15? No. Questions and comments, page 16? No. Page 17. Councillor Galley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. there's a term here that I've come across, which I thought, crikey, I never expected to see this from a Labour council, economic unactive people. That's a term and a half. The key, though, that I picked up on was there's obviously a covenant there about that people moving in must be economic active people, or they cannot put economic unactive people into those properties. I just wondered if there would be equally a covenant that will stop those properties being brought by the private sector that would be happy to put economic unactive people in there. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hobson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of related questions, if I may. I was very pleased to see the remarkable 35% drop in domestic CO2 emissions in Blackpool over recent years. Other than the Cosy Homes in Lancashire programme, what other factors account for this incredible drop in emissions, and as Blackpool has seen the largest drop in domestic emissions in the country, could the Blackpool model be used as an exemplar model of best practice by other authorities?
Any further questions? No? Page 17. No. Page 18. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I noted that we now, is it G7 or G5 or GS, whatever they're called, a similar scheme, the litter catching scheme. Yeah, this is the same scheme that was rolled out in Leeds about 4 years ago. It only lasted 12 months. No reasons why, but I'm glad that they are collecting money. But the question's been asked by one of my constituents is, why are they walking around in twos or sometimes in gangs when they could do a lot more if they were split? And when are we going to see them in the shoulder neighbourhoods? Because at the moment they're just concentrating on the town centre.
Any further questions? Page 18. Page 19. No. Page 20. Okay, thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to address Councillor Mark Smith through the portfolio holder, Mayor, about his remarks regarding the airport. Firstly, and regarding Gordon Marsden MP's remarks that I need to be more positive. I'd like to ask the rest of the Labour councillors who else went knocking on all the doors on the airports around Britain, including Norwich, East Anglia, which is Norwich, of course, Liverpool. Yeah, I went to see Jet2, Ryanair, EasyJet, and Flybe. I went to see them all. I didn't see any Labour councillors down there. I didn't see anyone when I was talking to them. I was campaigning for Blackpool Airport and still am. I want it to open. But let me tell you about Cat 2, Cat 3. Blackpool has a Cat 2 category, as you're aware of. It actually has a Cat 3. The only difference is that they have to pay £250 for every movement into the area. When you consider that Cat 3 will take up to an 18mm fuselage plane, and that 7 Series commercial jet is 54 metres, you'll see there's a huge difference. I would love it to get to Cat 5, Cat 6, and even Cat 7. I would love that to happen. And if this council is so interested in that happening, why did they allow the terminal building to be demolished? Why am they not objecting to the houses being built at the end of the runway? Because I'm sure the CAA will consider that. Blackpool Airport is now a heliport, servicing private jets as well, and doing well out of it. And I'm pleased about that. But the dream that it will become the holiday airport destination to and from is just that. Large aircraft, large 7 Series jets can land at Blackpool Airport now, but they've got to be empty, both coming in and going out. But the opportunity, and this is what you're not driving, is that this airport could service those jets. It has the hangars, it has the capacity, and it has a neighbouring enterprise zone where similar engineering and associated trades to service those aircraft could be developed. But you're not chasing it. Get on your bikes and go looking for it. And eventually, with that sort of investment, just perhaps, perhaps, we might see a return of jet airlines. I'm convinced that CityLink want to build a direct route to Ireland, which would be great. We've already got the hop now from the Isle of Man, but I think they're looking to go to Dublin, which would be great. But stop telling the people of Blackpool that we're going to get Jet 2 taking them to Mallorca and Ibiza. It ain't going to happen.
Thank you. Page 20, questions or comments? Oh, Councillor Blackburn. Sorry, I missed you, dear.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's on the same subject. It was fascinating, I certainly found it fascinating, to get the Wikipedia guide to British airports. Right, it was fantastic. But Councillor Williams is doing what he does all the time. He's living in the past, and he's fighting the battles of 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. Right? The situation at the airport is very clear. There are some operators operating out of the airport. It is never going to be, and it was never going to be, and we all know this in this room, even if some of us try and pretend that that isn't the case, a huge international airport hub. It was not going to be a Manchester or a Liverpool or a Stansted or a Heathrow or a Gatwick. It was what it was. And actually what it did was take a lot of people out of Blackpool rather than bring a huge amount of people into it. I saw an item, and I'm sorry to reinforce Councillor Galley's view, I saw an article on Facebook the other day where a company was advertising flights from Blackpool to Ireland. And one of the first comments from a member of the public on this is, they shouldn't have shut the airport. And you think, no, they're advertising flights from Blackpool to Ireland, ergo, the airport is not shut. The airport is open, and it's open for business. But we have to be realistic about that, and we have been realistic about what the airport site can offer. It can be a bit of a spoke airport. It will be able to take planes up to a certain size, but not huge jetliners and dreamliners that are going to take you around the world. What we have done, though, and I find it incredible that the opposition haven't asked any questions about the enterprise zone. We were hugely successful through working with the combined authority and with the Lancashire Enterprise Zone, all of the things that Councillor Williams doesn't think we ought to be doing, to secure enterprise zone status for the airport. Why is there no interest at all in what's happening there, in the new developments? Never mind talking about what happened years ago. Talk about the future, for goodness sake.
Yeah, I've got it. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I chaired the airport board for many years, as Councillor Callow knows, because she sat on it with me. And I welcomed international flights into that airport. In fact, I was the chair of the airport board when we brought Ryanair into the airport. And I was looking for new routes all the time from that airport. Unfortunately, the runway isn't long enough. We had to extend it to actually bring Ryanair into the airport. And if we could have extended it westward, that was my ideal way, because it was a great flight path for the airport. And I wanted, mostly, I think, was to get a link between Blackpool Airport and the west coast of Ireland. And there we would have had a natural hub to the world. I remember sitting in a meeting with the chair of Ryanair, and him saying, we'll have no through booking. So that meant you couldn't fly from Blackpool to London or Stansted and get on an international Ryanair flight from there, because he wouldn't do through booking. He was adamant about that, and there was all sorts of limitations on that. We had a very, very difficult time with Ryanair at the time, and unfortunately the airport's gone the way it is now, and I would dearly have loved to have developed it more. But it wasn't to be. In fact, I sat down in London on many occasions on the airports, the Local Government Association airport boards, and I was lucky enough to get Blackpool as the only airport listed in the Future of Aviation document, which I still have. And I always used to say it's a Mickey Mouse airport compared with Manchester and Liverpool. Liverpool developed many years ago under Peel Holdings, when we should have developed, and your party were in charge of it then. Your party were in charge of it when they didn't even know what the national body for the airport board was because me and Roy said, what is this committee, many years ago? And I said, we should be on that. We'll go. And we went to every meeting. And they'd never seen Blackpool represented there. We had an airport, but it was for flights around the tower. We tried to develop it at great cost to the local taxpayer of Blackpool. Unfortunately, there are people that I knocked on the door only last night that worked at the airport and said, thank you for what you did at the airport. Unfortunately, I lost my job after it was sold on and things. I was hopeful of it being developed, but it never was to be. It was never going to be the ultra international airport. What sold the airport was the development. When we lost the casino bid, we would have developed that airport, no end, I can tell you that now. When we lost that bid, the super casino bid, and Eddie was part of that bid, as we've already heard.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews.
Thank you.
Councillor Galley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was just a response to Councillor Blackburn's last point about why we've not asked any questions about the enterprise zone tonight. Well, the reason we've not is if Councillor Blackburn was to attend scrutiny more, he'll know we've been actually asking those questions at scrutiny. In addition, following one of the last scrutiny meetings, I sent a full report on suggestions from the Centre for City Studies to Councillor Smith. So rather than Councillor Smith sending you Facebook page comments, he should really be sending you the report that I sent you. Then you would know the answer to that question.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just like to reiterate, I'm not living in the past, I'm living very much now, thank you very much. I know the airport's capability. I accept it. But what I'm saying is there are advantages there, there are opportunities. Stop telling the people of Blackpool that big holiday jets can come back. They won't. Unfortunately, for those who enjoy to get on at the end of the prom and nip off to Spain, it ain't going to happen anymore. You can fly to Dublin, get on a plane and go to America. That's great, you can do that. But the enterprise zone is now a partner of that airport, and we should be developing that more. I accept where the airport is.
Sorry, Councillor Williams, happy. Your time is up. Thank you. Right.
That's the end of the session productively.
Sorry?
That's the end of the session productively.
The time is up. Councillor, if you can, in the time left to you. Councillor Campbell, can you answer the questions, please?
I'll do my best. Councillor Clapham and Councillor Brown, yeah, Plymouth Road Bridge, we didn't mean for everybody to disappear, but if that's what's happened, makes it much easier. But, are they? Sorry about that. But, you know, looking at this plan, I mean, it's been very, very well thought out. I've also insisted that there are no roadworks happen in that area, in that time, no planned roadworks anyway. So obviously emergency things will still happen. It is about trying to keep the traffic flow going as much as possible. Councillor Galley, fireworks, been fantastic. I have the great privilege of being one of the judges this year. It's extremely difficult to judge something like that, as you can imagine. Last week's was absolutely amazing. Who knows what this one will be like? And yeah, the Anchorstone scheme, they've done a fantastic job, have John's officers. I'm going to be coming visiting you soon as well, so if we can have a little stroll and a chat. The ITMS, we've been talking about apps today, but I haven't talked about apps for this specifically, but I'm happy to take it back to IT and have that chat. Councillor Clapham, contracts, yeah, it looks much better. Thank you for all your feedback. But no, fine, we will get a column put in to see who actually tendered for the contracts as well. Councillor Galley, the PSPO for parks is live. Because it was signed off, but I will look into that again for you and get back to you as soon as possible. Councillor Galley again, economically inactive people, yes. The houses in question are actually owned by a registered social landlord. So I think the fact them going to the private sector would be very, very slim, but we would ensure that wouldn't happen anyway. Councillor Hobson, very, very pleased about this 35% drop in CO2. Absolutely fantastic. It's been the Cosy Homes in Lancashire scheme. It's been all the work that we've done through selective and additional licensing. various things that we've done as a council as well that's led to that drop. And if any other council would like to learn from our example, I'm more than happy to speak to them. Thank you. Councillor Williams, 3GS. Yes, we do travelling tours at the moment, and they will be becoming more mobile. I was told today that they've been given bus passes, so they could pop up anywhere. So watch out, don't let her anywhere, otherwise you'll be in trouble. The R&2s, there are only 5 of them just now, because it is a pilot, but I hope it will be so successful we'll be able to go into contract with them properly as from next year and get even more of them. Councillor Williams, yeah, I'm going to allow Councillor Smith to answer that one, if that's okay. But I would just reiterate what Councillor Blackburn has stated as well. I agree with them completely. And then Councillor Matthews, yes, and I think that was just a statement more than a question. And as was Councillor Galleys and Councillor Williams. So I think that's dealt with. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I thought you might ask this question, so I was a little bit more prepared for your response. I think many times in the council we've sort of reiterated that we're keeping the infrastructure for the future for larger planes to travel from Blackpool. It's still there, the line's there. Passenger terminal has been removed. If they need it, it'd be relocated closer to the runway to make it easier for any passengers. So that's in the plan, part of enterprise zone, as you appreciate. It's not Jet2 is not the only airline that could come out to Blackpool. As you probably mentioned, there's a few more. I mean, I did a bit of research. There's Ryanair, EasyJet, Flybe, Monarch, WOW, Eurowings, Air Baltic, and many more. So, but if they come knock on Blackpool Council's door tomorrow, we're willing to talk to them, you know. But it's got to be in the right economic situation for the airline for them to operate out of Blackpool. You know, at the moment, the country's still in a recession, and we're coming out of it. But in the future, we hope they will come back to Blackpool and trade, and larger air flights will go from Blackpool. But part of the enterprise zone is to develop aviation in that area to support the larger jets and planes. So, and we're working on the master plan for the enterprise zone for that to happen. So, but my glasses are half full, don't know about yours, but I'm looking forward to the future, and I look forward to the future to having larger planes there. But it's got to be right for the air operator, as well as the Balfour Beach is actually the owner of the airport at the moment, and actually it actually falls in Fylde as well, so as far as responsibility as well as Blackpool, okay? So we're still working on it, and we will do into the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. We move on to 6C, the Cabinet Secretary's report for resilient communities. Councillor CAIN. Sorry, I was going to cough then.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Pleasure to submit the report and hopefully answer whatever questions are put forward. Thank you.
Short and sweet, thank you. Questions or comments on page 25? Page 26. Page 27. Page 28. Page 29. Page 30. Page 31. Page 32. And page 33. General questions and comments, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to bring attention, I don't know where this falls or actually whose remit this falls in, but it's just a question I might like to ask. We have several housing agencies in Blackpool that do a sterling job, mainly looking after young people who are in trouble, have problems, etc. But at a cost. And I'm just worried that we're trying to get these people back into society, but it seems to be a never-ending chain. And are we doing enough to get them back into society? Are we doing enough to get them back into self-earning? Because at the present time, 3 of the main housing associations, not including Blackpool Coastal Housing, are costing us on an average £8 million a year in housing benefit. That's each, which is extremely large amount of housing benefit. So, although these, that's the figure I've got, I may have read that wrong, it could be £8,986 to £1,415 for the 3 of them. In whichever case, it's still nearly £9 million. a year. Can we help them to get these people, this should be self-liquidating, can we not help them to get these people back into normal lives so the numbers start reducing? Because it seems that this is an ongoing situation where we've got a constant stream of people living in these housing associations that are costing the taxpayer a great deal of money in housing benefit. I've got one other question, if I may, Madam Mayor. It relates to the fluoride in school milk. I'm not going to make the argument whether it's good or whether it's bad, etc., but we did do some urine tests before we started the fluoride edition, and it showed that there was no fluoride in the children we were administering it to. Now we've lost the funding or taken away the funding for school nurses. Are we actually measuring how much fluoride these children have in their bodies now, or is it safe? Is it over the limit? Well, it could be your child. You might be allergic to fluoride at a certain level, you never know. But are we checking this? Thank you.
Councillor Galley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A question I had was regarding children's services for Councillor CAIN. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, a question I had for you, Councillor CAIN, was about children's services, and that there's always a continual overspend of over £2 million in that department. So I just wanted to know what work you're doing and what the department's doing in terms of reducing that overspend. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Benson.
The Gloucester Avenue Mental Health Rehabilitation. All services received good, safe, effective, caring, responsive and well led. Reading through these reports, these services aren't just good, they're outstanding. I think the staff should be commended for providing a quality, effective service, keeping some of our most vulnerable residents safe and well cared for. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any further questions or comments generally? Is your hand up, Councillor Mitchell? Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I wonder if the Cabinet Secretary would agree with me that the main blame for the very high level of people on housing benefit should be laid at the government's door. The government control, and I hope that won't be interpreted in a facetious way. The government is supposed to control the economy. How many times have we heard about the Northern Powerhouse and this great return from the recession, which seemed to be taken about 6 years, and we're still not out of it. And those of us who follow the official accounts know that the official statistics mask the reality of the situation, because they never refer to the millions on so-called trading schemes. They never refer to the very large amount of people who have their sanctions withdrawn and therefore not counted, have the benefits withdrawn and therefore not counted as unemployed. Would the Cabinet Secretary agree with me that blame for the very large amount of people on housing benefit should be laid at the government's door, as should the blame for the lack of a proper housing investment strategy?
Councillor Luke Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm sure everybody here today will agree that volunteers all over Blackpool do a fantastic and much appreciated job, and I hope everybody will join me in thanking volunteers for all their hard work and dedication shown in their local areas. It was a great pleasure to launch a new volunteering initiative in Clifton Ward a few weeks ago, and we are grateful for the support of local residents, businesses and organisations, including the Gazette, who featured us on their front page. I was disappointed to see negative criticism about volunteering in the local paper against the launch of the scheme from a Conservative councillor. The strongly worded letter of complaint only made it to page 14. However, it did manage to get Clifton Volunteers Club even more publicity. So thanks for that.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just like to say something about Councillor Taylor. Yes, there are some volunteers in Blackpool do some incredible work. And a lot of people in my group have been doing this for years. And they don't offer incentives. They offer friendship and they offer satisfaction. And that's what we do. And we don't go on the Gazette and do it that often. But everybody should be recognised, you're right. I don't know if this is in the right place. Maybe I should have mentioned this earlier, Councillor CAIN. But I know there's a problem in looked after children. I know there's a problem in children's services. And I know that we've agreed to look at another consultant to find out why. I'm not laying blame on this whatsoever as to do that. This is a family, and this is our family, and this is all our responsibility to make sure they get the very best attention. But what I was looking at was the consultant cost on children's services over the last 12 months. And it comes to £166,201. That sounds a lot. And when I spoke with the chief exec, he seems to think, oh no, that's not right. They should be temporary staff. Well, if that's the case, we're either recording this financial cost in the wrong place, which is inappropriate, or we're already spending £166,000 on consultants. What are they doing? How are they not helping to fix the problem, and why are we having to bring in more consultants? Thank you, Madam.
Councillor Maxine Callow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could I just say that I agree with everything that Councillor Luke Taylor has said. Yeah. After serving as the Mayor of Blackpool, the Mayoress and the Deputy Mayor on 2 occasions, in my speeches to volunteers I have said, this world wouldn't go round without you. They're the most important people. And whatever they're volunteering for, whether it's to look after other old people or children or do a project where they live, this town would be the poorer without them. And I'll stand up here today and say that they're the people who should be getting the honours in the honours list. They should be getting the MBEs and not the OBEs, where people are in well-paid jobs and they're getting honours. And I agree with everything that Luke has said. I think the volunteers in Blackpool on the coast are absolutely magnificent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callow. As you know, it is something dear to my own heart as well. On this particular subject, we are unanimous. If there are no more questions, Councillor Clapham.
Yes, it's only a short question. It's looked after children. Could Councillor CAIN tell us why there seems to be always a peak in June? 2 Junes running, if you look at the stats, they end up 2 short of 500, and then they go back down again. So around that part of the year, there must be particular factors that increase the number of children that come into our care. And if he's got a statistician or a consultant looking into it, he should start there. Okay.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? No? Councillor CAIN to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Try and take them in the order that they came through. Councillor Williams, you mentioned about the housing associations and young people, and can we help? We're doing everything that we can to help those young people. We're doing everything we can to get them into employment and get them onto training courses. So we're continuing to work with the multi-agency approach, and hopefully we'll get them, as you put it, back into society, and then they can contribute to society. So there's a lot of work going on there. Regarding the fluoride in milk, that is continually being monitored. Just to correct you there, we do still have school nurses. It's a restructure, so it's a wrong statement to say that we don't have any. We still have them in the BA. It's a restructure. Councillor Galley, you mentioned about the children's services overspend. Yes, it is a concern, a deep concern to me, and with the senior management team, I'm having daily meetings, more or less, to try and address that. I am fully being briefed constantly by Director of Resources, Director of Children's Services. We have got things in place to get that overspend, but it's sometimes out of our control, because if somebody comes and knocks on the front door, as they say, we've got to look after them, and our priority is the safeguarding. I've said this before in this chamber, the safeguarding of our children and our adults who are vulnerable is paramount to any other issue that I see in the entire town. So we've got to make sure that we've got the support across party on that one, because what we're doing for children's services is sometimes out of our control, and we will never turn our back on a vulnerable child that's requiring our assistance. Councillor Benson, you mentioned about the CQC reports and everything, and I've got to say that I've got to echo your thoughts and give a big thank you and an appreciation to all our staff and officers, what they're doing there. It is outstanding, and I'm really proud of getting the good reports, because it's great to say when we get good reports from organisations such as CQC, Ofsted, etc. So thank you for your comments on that one. Councillor Mitchell, yes, I will agree with you about the housing benefits, and it does firmly fall at the government's feet at the moment, and that's one of the reasons why we're supporting the combined authority. And if we get what we want within the devolution deal, and that's still in discussions, and that's a big thing for us to get control of the housing benefits. And if we get control of the housing benefits, I'll be working very, very closely with Simon, who will be leading that, and will make a big difference in Blackpool to people. So welcome your comment, and the sooner we can get that responsibility from central government and in our hands, the better it'll be for the people of Blackpool. There's a lot of things about volunteers and so forth there, and I'm going to capture them all, because there's Councillor Williams, Councillor Luke Taylor, Councillor Mrs Callow. The volunteers are essential. Part of building the resilience within the communities is going to be reliant on volunteers. That's why the leader of the council put that position, gave me the position of being Cabinet Secretary for Resilient Communities. And part of that responsibility is I've got a Cabinet member who's developing the third sector and the voluntary sector, and a lot of good work that Maria's doing. And I'm supporting Maria along with the rest of the team, and we're going to do everything we can to support volunteers throughout the town. I think they do a fantastic job. There's a lot of people that are not recognised as volunteers. There's all the sports clubs in the town that go unrecognised sometimes, and there's hundreds of those people that make the difference to people. They turn out in all weathers, and they do the little bit. Every little helps, as a company might have you say. But I'm not under licence to any supermarket company. But it really, really is. I can't emphasise enough. Whatever people can do to volunteer, every bit helps. And whether that you have to give them an incentive or not, well, let's get to them volunteers. Let them come out and let's recognise them. And yes, let's get them some honours, because those are the people that deserve it, not the multi-thousand-pound top-ranking jobs that are basically paid for. They pay for their honours. Let's forget that. Let's concentrate on the people that really, really make a difference. And let's all unite together and support the volunteers, because without them, we will not be able to carry on forward. We're being slashed with funding. We're reliant upon more and more people taking up volunteers. And I say, whatever you do, just if you're not already volunteering, anybody out there listening to this, just come along, get some advice, please volunteer. We've got big opportunities for people now. I'm going to use this as a plug. We've got a big opportunity for foster carers. We want people. We're going out far and wide. If anybody out there knows of anybody who's interested in fostering, please come to our next open day on the 10th of October at 10 o'clock at the Hilton Hotel. Learn about fostering. Whatever your circumstances, if you've got a spare room, you'll be able to foster. We'll put a full package of training around, and I'm really, really passionate that we've currently got 700 opportunities for people to foster, 700 young children that want a loving home. Please, please help us to get that. And the last one there, Councillor Clapham, you refer to our looked after children. They are our children. I'm really proud to be the chair of the corporate parent panel. We do a lot of work with those children. However, we want them referred to, and they want to be referred to as our children and not looked after children. And it's going to take a bit of time, but we want that ethos ingrained in. They're our children. They're our corporate responsibilities. We'll continue to give them our full support. I will question a little bit about the figure. The figure tends to peak around about January time. But this time, when January 2016, we did peak up, but we didn't drop down, because it's maintained. The looked after children, the figure, it has been between 482 and it's actually gone to 500 this week, and there's only one other time that it's actually gone to 500, and that was back in 2013 for 1 week. So in respect to the people, can I just say that there's a lot of good work there as well. I've got to say to our social workers, they're doing a tremendous job, and what isn't seen in that top figure is just the churn. There's a lot of churn going in there, so a lot of people are coming out of the system, but there's equally a lot going in it. So a credit to the staff, I've got to say, that the staff and the officers that are dealing with that, we are getting on top of the staffing. Really, really proud of what we're getting on there now. But again, a lot of good work going, and a lot of that is unseen because all we see at is the top figure that doesn't seem to be moving anywhere. But I can assure you that the officers are out there doing the bit, and a credit to them. And like I say, I hope that people will do what they can for the volunteers, and particularly for our children. Each and every one of us in this chamber and each and every member of staff has their responsibilities, and we'll continue to do whatever we can. Yes, there's cost implications, but that isn't a barrier for us protecting the vulnerable people of Blackpool. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I did ask a question about consultancy.
No, I'm sorry, you can't question again, sorry. You keep pushing me tonight, don't you? You keep pushing me. No, you're okay. We'll move on to the last report, 60, the Combined Fire Authority report. I do hope you all spotted the deliberate mistake. Oh, don't say me, blind as a bat was the only one that did. It's down as 5D instead of 6D, that's all. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, councillors. I'd like to present the report to you. I'm very privileged, along with Councillor Matthews and Councillor Williams, to be on the Combined Authority. I was only just thinking as I was looking at the report again that it's called the Combined Fire Authority, but it doesn't always portray everything they do. And it's the Fire and Rescue Service. And I think many times we forget the work that the Fire Authority do through the Fire and Rescue Service. It's not just putting out fires, it's education, it's road safety, it's dealing with accidents, it's dealing with rescuing horses, as we saw in Wyre over the weekend. And so I recommend the report to you. One of the things that I'm privileged to be as well is the road safety champion at the authority. And I just wanted to draw your attention to the road safety part of the report. Because the Fire Authority offers a service to all the schools throughout Lancashire, throughout Blackburn and throughout Blackpool. And we've already reached 60,000 young people in education in the schools. And if you're on the governors of any of the schools in Blackpool and they're not having road safety education, it can be got through the Fire Authority. So, you know, take advantage of that. One of the things that's been a tremendous success this year has been the Safe Drive, Stay Alive campaign that we've been doing, which is aimed at teenagers of driving age and above to encourage them to be conscious of the road safety aspects they should, you know, be following. About talking on your phone, sending messages, drinking before you go out, drugs, etc. Speeding, you know, showing off to your friends, I can drive this car faster than you can, type of thing. And that's been presented to many of the colleges throughout the county and through Blackburn and Blackpool. And I've been to several of these presentations, and you can hear a pin drop when this presentation is made. And it's the police, the ambulance people, the Fire Authority, and the parents of children who've been lost in road accidents or severely injured, who talk to these young people and share with them their experiences of what they've gone through. And there is an event next week, and as I said at the Fire Authority on Monday, I'm a bit ashamed in a way that I can't be there because I'd already booked my holiday and I shall be in Eastbourne, but the date that they've picked to come to Blackpool is next Tuesday the 27th, and it's at the Winter Gardens. So although it's aimed at young people, I'm sure if anybody turned up, you wouldn't be turned away. It's something worth seeing. It's something worth going to see what we're doing to educate the young people. So I'm happy to present the report, and if there are any questions, I'll answer them.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Before I ask for questions, Councillor Williams, you're also on that Combined Authority. Do you wish to say anything?
I'm happy to echo everything that Fred said. I think we should be proud of one of the finest fire authorities in the UK. And as Fred and I and Alan witnessed some of the work they did during the flood problems in the the gales and storms that came was just incredible. And everyone to a man, I think, volunteered to come back into service. In fact, too many volunteered, if that makes sense, because they couldn't accept everybody. They wanted to stretch them out and put them into place before. So I just echo everything that Councillor Jackson has said. And as I say, we should be proud that we have one of the finest fire and rescue services in the UK.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Matthews, you're also on the board. Did you wish to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Fred said about the Safe Drive, Stay Alive campaign, and I'd urge you to go on and listen. It's a very emotive campaign because it's the fire authority, the police, that were actually in attendance at a disaster on the motorway or wherever, at an accident, and the parents of the young people that might have been killed or maimed are there, and they're giving you their story. And it is a very emotive thing to see. And considering it's in Blackpool and so close, I think you should go along and have a look at it, because it is open to everybody, not just the young people, although it is aimed at young people. I'd also say we witnessed the other day a new drone that the Fire Authority have got that will aid them in their assistance, along with the police, getting more quickly to a road accident and seeing where, and it follows the pattern of how the car actually became involved in the accident. So it's a very useful piece of kit. It's about £50,000, I think they said, and £10,000 has come from the police authority, and the others have been borne by the fire and rescue service. But it not only aids the police, it aids mountain rescue and any accidents or fires or anything like that. So it's going to be a useful piece of kit, and I hope when you see it flying around, instead of the helicopter, you'll recognise it as a fire and rescue authority vehicle, and it'll aid your assistance in getting you to help. What springs to mind is it would have been very useful in the recent floods when people are flooded out and finding out where they need help very quickly and getting there and finding the easiest route to get there. Anyway, I think you all ought to have a look at these exhibitions and things that the Fire Authority are doing, because I think it's really, really good stuff.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Councillor Brown.
Madam Mayor, it's on page 37 and it comes from the second paragraph from the bottom. It's environment, and it says champion for the environment, Councillor Brown. And I'm just going to make it clear that it's not me.
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Brown. Any further questions or comments? Could you turn your microphone off, please, Councillor Brown? No? Nothing more? Do you have anything further to respond to this, Councillor
Can I just mention, Madam Mayor, I didn't say what time the event was at the Winter Gardens. It's 10 a.m. in the morning or 1:30 in the afternoon. And I did intend to mention the drone. I think Eddie might not have wanted the drone because it was an infringement on your civil liberties, maybe. But it was amazing. They sent us some photographs. I presume Tony and Alan got them as well. You know, we were down here and the drone's way up there in the sky. There is a limit to the height it can go. I think they said 400 feet, but I thought it was a lot higher than that it went. And the photographs that they took, incredible. Every detail about you. You know, I'm scratching my head on one, I think, and they've captured it, you know. But these drones are a real assistance because they can see where people are hiding from the police point of view. You know, if somebody's escaped and they're on the run, they can find them where they are. And they're also very helpful with the fires. They can judge the density of the fire in a building and know where, you know, what's going on inside. So they're tremendous help. And I hope if they're used to protect us, that's a good thing. If they're used in the wrong way, that's a bad thing. But I think these are for the good cause.
When you see it on YouTube, don't laugh.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. We move on to item 7, the Health and Wellbeing Strategy. Councillor CAIN to propose.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a privilege after all the hard work of the joint partners involving the Health and Wellbeing Board, working in partnership with all the agencies, cross-party. There's been tremendous consultation with this, and I'm pleased to present it for approval tonight. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor CAIN. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Cross. Are there any questions, comments to Councillor CAIN? Oh, I'm so sorry. Look, Amy, it's you. Sit down. I'm not letting you speak. I am so sorry.
All I was going to say, Madam Mayor, was that I formally second the motion and reserve the right to speak. Is that okay?
That is quite all right. Thank you, Councillor Cross. As I was saying, sorry about that, Amy. Any questions, comments on this report? No? I don't think you need to respond then, Councillor CAIN. Sorry. We'll put it to the vote then. All those in favour, please show. Don't think we've anybody against. We're unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Move on to item 8. The relationship with SANYA, and it's Councillor Blackburn to propose.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not got a huge amount to add to what's in the report, but just an update, if I may. Members will recall that in addition to the £4 million worth of investment in Illuminasia, our links with China have grown still further. And earlier on in the year, we signed a deal to hold the Blackpool Open Dance Championships in Shanghai. So this is a brand new event. This isn't an event that's detracting from anything that's already in Blackpool. But it was felt that the name of Blackpool would be a real draw for people in that part of the world. And that was a 5-year deal which guarantees the council a minimum income of £100,000 every year for the next 5 years. That first event is now taking place in Shanghai. There were 15,000 spectators, Madam Mayor, and 5,600 entrants. To give you an idea of the scale of that achievement, the next biggest ballroom dance championship in China is held in the Sichuan province, and there are 1,800 entrants. So this was 3 times the size of the next biggest ballroom dance championship in China. The effect of that was not only that this received huge publicity within China and the wider region, but also that as a result of those sort of numbers, we've made an additional profit on top of the £100,000 for the first year. We made an additional profit of £47,000. So huge benefit to us and to the Winter Gardens. But more importantly, Madam Mayor, there has been interest expressed by somebody who wants to hold a similar event in the Philippines, a similar event in the United States, and 5 regional dance championships in China as well. And it is the Blackpool style. It was the fact that we had the Empress Orchestra there. All of these championships in China tend to be danced along to recorded music. Well, we'd taken the best ballroom dance orchestra in the world and taken them over to China, and it was completely and utterly, I wasn't able to be there, but I've seen the photographs, and it was absolutely awesome event. And a demonstration, as I say, on top of the investment in Illuminasia and everything else of what can be achieved. I think these figures, frankly, are just the start of what we can do. The Deputy Mayor of China, my feathery hat on already. The Deputy Mayor of Sanya, who visited along with a substantial delegation, I have to say, and dragons and everything, it was fantastic, was very keen to talk to me about a 3-year action plan in terms of tourism, in terms of economic investment, and in terms of education as well, and what we can share between the 2 cities. It's a fantastic opportunity, and I highly commend it to the council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. Have we got a seconder? And I'll let you speak this time. Councillor Campbell.
Formally second, was ever right to speak. Thank you.
Councillor Peter Callow.
Thanks, thank you, Madam Mayor. Excuse me. I think it's all well and good promoting Blackpool in China and the Blackpool Dance Festival, but I personally think we shouldn't rush into things, because we've got to protect our dance festivals here in Blackpool, not in China, and it may well be that we should be a little bit more careful. We don't want the Shanghai people to actually Shanghai this dance festival.
Oh dear.
The fact is, we need the dance festivals in Blackpool where the public, where the visitors can come, where businesses operate and get money, where guest houses are close by. Don't rush into it. Have a think. You don't want to invest. Well, you're not going to live in Shanghai, are you? No, well, there you are then. The fact of the matter is, we need to protect dancing in Blackpool. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wholeheartedly support any trade with any foreign country, and especially China. I think they have a great deal to offer, and hopefully to Blackpool. I'm aware that the dance festival is now being marketed in Australia, in America, Canada and South America, and they're offering in their marketing, so I've led to believe, quite considerable prizes. And for those who want to compete from the British sector, they're offering discounted direct fares from Manchester. That's all good, and it's good if Blackpool retain it. I actually think we've sold it cheap. I think we could have got more money for the Blackpool brand. No, I do. It's just, you know, if you think it's a good deal, fine. I think I would have stuck out for more. I think the Blackpool brand's worth more. But don't get me wrong. I think it's great. We're just relying on you, Councillor Blackburn, to make sure that the Chinese, in a certain extent, and I love the culture, they don't believe in copyright. They don't believe in copyright laws at all. Out of China, you'll know the biggest guitar manufacturers in the world are Fender and Gibson. Oh, well, it's true. It's true. Yeah, I could buy Fenders and Gibsons online from China all day long. They're not Fenders or Gibsons. So I'm just telling you, Chinese, and it's not an insult to them, it's their culture, they don't understand what copyright is. They think they're being sort of complimentary. But I would have sold it for more. I hope it brings a development for Blackpool, and I hope it's everything that Councillor Blackburn says. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maxine Callow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before I say anything, I'd just like to say to the Chinese community here in Blackpool how much we value them and what they bring to the town and how they cooperate with the council here in Blackpool. But I am nervous about this, and I do hope that Councillor Blackburn doesn't just scoff and say, oh, you know, you're not in favour of this because we've got a Labour administration. I would hope that he would just listen, perhaps, to some of our fears. And I am apprehensive about some of this. To start with, who actually paid the expenses for the Chinese to come and visit Blackpool? I know that they paid our expenses when we stayed over there in China, but we paid £5,000 for our delegation. Why do they need the Blackpool name for their dance festival in Shanghai? Did they pay us, as Councillor Williams has said, did they pay us to use the Blackpool name? Because we are known here in Blackpool as the dance capital of the world. Yep. Absolutely. And they've seen how successful it is, and they're going to try to copy it. Now, if they do, and it becomes a success for them, the dancers are not going to be going over there to China and spending the money travelling there and coming to Blackpool Blackpool as well. And at the end of the day, I'm afraid that we could suffer because of this. And I think we've got to be very, very careful in how we approach this and not jump in with 2 feet. We've got to think about the prosperity of the town. And the revenue that these dance festivals bring to Blackpool, with the hotels, guest houses, shops, restaurants, and also all the publicity. You've only to go in Marks and Spencer's when the dance festivals are on, and they can't cope in Marks's, providing bottles of water, bananas and sandwiches for all these wonderful dancers. And it is something that we've built on in Blackpool over the years. And I am slightly suspicious of why they're wanting it, why they're actually fussing round us and naming it the Blackpool Dance Festival. I just hope that in 10 or 15 years' time, we haven't lost all our dance festivals, because if we have, then it will be the fault of Councillor Blackburn and this administration, who have jumped into this. And please don't laugh. You've got to protect what you've got. Once you've lost it, you'll never get it back. And they can offer an awful lot more over there than we can here. They could build a Winter Gardens in China in a week. They could build a tower in a fortnight. They're very clever people, and you've got to remember this. And I don't want to be insulting to the Chinese, because here in Blackpool, they do contribute an awful lot to the local economy, and they've integrated, and they are wonderful, wonderful people. But we've just got to be very, very careful of what it may end up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's just one question, Simon. When did we achieve city status?
Thank you. Councillor Galley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I was quite pleased actually to see this link being forged with China, and echo what Councillor Williams has said. I actually see this, though, in terms of what we can learn, not so much from the dancing side. We use the dancing side as a flagship in, but it's what we then do in terms of what other cities have done successfully. And I would look at what Vancouver have done and what London have done in terms of their relationship with China. Already, if we take Anchor Zone, we have a very strong Mandarin lessons and course and training scheme, where we have a number of Mandarin-based teachers. So every child that's going through Anchor Zone Academy is now learning Mandarin. The problem is, though, is what happens when they leave that school, and where do they go? And what I would like to see is that we push as a council to actually expand the training and coaching and language skills in terms of Mandarin throughout the schools on the file, both at secondary and primary level. And at the same time, we then work not so much in terms of just focus on the dancing side. We actually, as I say, use that as a soft way in, but alongside the marketing that generates, we take along business ambassadors to sell our enterprise zone, to sell the space there, to sell our food manufacturing expertise, to sell our plastics expertise. So we actually use this as a bridge into China, just as Vancouver has done, just as London has done in terms of their relationship. So what I don't want to see, though, Madam Mayor, is in 5 years' time, this is a city status in the same way we've got the same relationship with the German town, which has no economic benefit that I can see for this town, rather than just that we exchange mayoral visits. So what I would like to see is this actually really focus on the economic diversification of our economy, especially how we target business ambassadors around our key industries and how we use our enterprise zone. Dancing is the way in, but it's the economics of diversification that will make this work or fail. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Blackburn to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I sometimes feel like I live in a parallel universe where everything that I say bounces off some invisible line that clearly exists up the middle of this chamber. And I'd be interested to talk to Councillor Elms and Councillor Humphreys later to see what side of that line they're on. And whether or not they've been able to hear any of the things I've said, because all of the points that have been brought up are actually answered either A, in the report, or B, in what I said to introduce the report. So on the issue of did they pay us to use the Blackpool name, yes, we signed a deal earlier on this year, as I said at the start, and as is covered in the report, that they will pay us £100,000 a year, every year, for the next 5 years, for the duration of the contract. In addition to that, we've generated a further £47,000 of income for the council this year, based on the ticket sales of the first Blackpool Open Dance Championships, which were held in Shanghai. Councillor Galley, I've already said that the Deputy Mayor of Sanya has spoken to me at great length, and we will explore in great detail a 3-year plan of action which will cover areas such as economic growth and tourism and education. And included in education, one of us would have assumed, was language skills. Councillor Mrs Callow, I absolutely agree with you that dancing is crucial to Blackpool. Happy to announce that Strictly Come Dancing is coming here on the 19th of November. It's not going to Shanghai. As and when it does go to Shanghai, you may strip me of my feathery hat and toss me out of the Lord Mayor's mansion, which Councillor Williams has already decided that I'm going to be in. Just out of interest, having signed this deal, we then had the European Dance Championships in Blackpool, which generated £873,000 worth of economic benefit for the town. These aren't my figures, these are Visit England figures. We then had the Junior Dance Festival, which generated £1.785 million worth of economic benefit to the town, followed by the Showpiece, which is the May Dance Festival. Many visitors from China, many more than in previous years, which generated £8.2 million worth of economic benefit to the town. So this is a huge area. It's absolutely right that we should embrace it. I'm not sure, you know, Councillor Williams needs to be really careful where he buys his guitars, because if I saw a Fender Strat for 50 quid from China on the internet, I'd probably think that, well, I'd certainly consult trading standards before I bought it. I've not heard anybody raise a single serious objection to this, Madam Mayor, so I assume that we will be unanimous in welcoming the Chinese to join us as our new sister town rather than city, but they keep calling us a city and it seems kind of rude to argue.
Thank you, Councillor Blackburn. We'll
Just
see.
to
What
say,
are you adding, Councillor
I'm
Williams?
adding that, of course, you've got our support on this.
Oh, no, of course, sorry, Councillor Blackburn has responded.
Right, okay.
Sorry about that, I was forgetting that. We will now vote on the relationship with Sanya. All those in favour, please show. Any against? Abstentions? Thank you. Item 9, Independent Remuneration Panel. Councillor Blackburn to propose.
Thank you. My favourite item of the year.
Yes.
I'm happy to propose the appointment of a new member of the Independent Remuneration Panel.
Oh.
I'm happy to second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any questions? All those in favour, please vote. Thank you. We are unanimous again, I think. Thank you. And well done, Councillor Blackburn. Oh, dear. We now move on to item 10, which is the notices of motion. The first one, a Blackpool Sports Centre. We do have an amendment, don't we? So, oh no, that's the end one, sorry. Councillor Williams to move this motion. Sorry, I'm getting tired.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You'll be pleased to know that this wasn't my idea. It came from a resident when I was visiting that said, you know, you've done nothing to recognise Brian London and his achievements during his sporting days in Blackpool. And I said, but no, you're right, we probably haven't. He said, you should do what they've done for Richard Dunn, who was another boxer in his hometown of Doncaster. They named the sports centre after him. And I thought long and hard on that and thought, well, Brian used to train by running around Stanley Park. In fact, he set the trend. Brian was the first one ever to use it as a training track, and it's the reason now why hundreds of people do the same every year. He was British Commonwealth champion, He fought Muhammad Ali, he fought Floyd Patterson, several of the big-name boxers throughout the world. He had his own businesses in Blackpool that attracted famous people from all over the world to visit. George Best was to visit the club. There was never any trouble at the club. And you can understand why, because Brian was on the door. There was trouble, when it must you caused it. That was, yeah, you were the one who started it. He's always there for charity, Brian. I'm not saying he always puts his hand in his pocket. He's known for that, but he will turn out for charity. He's been a great ambassador for this town. He's never drunk in his life. He chose Blackpool as his hometown, I think in the early, probably late 40s, early 50s, and he never left. He's a quiet man. He's in his autumn years. We've done nothing to remember him, and I just thought it might be appropriate that if we call Blackpool Sports Centre the Brian London Stanley Park Sports Centre, he deserves recognition. I hope you're going to support this. I don't want to snub Brian, and I don't want any alternatives. We haven't thought about him for the Blackpool Medal in the past, and if it wasn't for this resident reminding me we'd done nothing for him, then I wouldn't have brought this motion forward. So I hope you can support it. He has been a genuine ambassador for the town, and we should be proud of his achievements. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Clapham.
Yeah. It does give me pleasure to second this particular motion because there's no doubt about it, Brian London is an icon in terms of boxing. He has always been Blackpool through and through. What with his businesses, his children were educated in Blackpool. I personally taught his son, yet another Brian Harper. The family's called Harper. So, and he did get his O-level in maths while I taught him. But knowing how big his dad was, I didn't have put in a lot of effort there. But no, he's a great man.
Yes.
The leaders mentioned his fights, but his most notorious brawl, I think, was in Porthcawl after a European Championship fight against his opponent. Spent quite a bit of the time headbutting him. Whether he leapt up and down to headbutting, I'm not sure. But it didn't go down well with the Harper family. So when the fight was stopped after the 8th round, because of a cut caused by the headbutting, the whole family leapt in and they had the biggest scrap that has ever been seen in a ring. But there we are, I had to pay the price for that. But that's how it is, boxing. It is a little bit of a rough sport, but he is a sound man. It's the only blemish, really, in his career, apart from losing to Muhammad Ali and a few others, but he certainly didn't transgress the rules at all. Clean living man. He does deserve the honour of it being named after him, the Sports Centre. Richard Dunn in Bradford certainly had the Sports Centre there named after him, but he ended up working on an oil rig, had a nasty accident, and now resigns in Scarborough. So it's almost coast to coast in terms of two heavyweights who failed against Ali. But there we are. It gives me pleasure to say.
Thank you. Councillor Ivan Taylor.
Whereas I don't wish to dispute anything that's been said about Brian London, and no doubt he would deserve some kind of recognition. I do find it a little bit ironic, though, that it's been proposed to use his name on a building that was so vehemently opposed building by the Tory group in this council. Well, you might say for goodness sake, but you can't write away reality and the simple truth. And the simple truth is that had it been left to you and your colleagues, there wouldn't be a sports centre in Stanley Park to name after any sportsman. So, and it has been, I think, a great success over the years and just justify the building of it and just justify those of us who insisted on pressing ahead with it, in spite of the petitions you organised, in spite of all the people who are in the balcony objecting to it, in spite of the radio programmes organised against it. So there's a little bit of hypocrisy here, Tony, in what you are saying. Now, yes, I've no doubt he is a very good guy. No doubt he deserves recognition. But I'm simply pointing out the irony of somebody like you from the Tory group in this council moving it, be named from the Blackpool Sports Centre, something that you were so against and tried to stop. Personally, I would like it to say, still remain called the Blackpool Sports Centre. That's what I would like to see. No doubt the leader of the council will advise about the process to be involved here, and that's something to be seen for the future. That's my own personal view. But I do find it a bit of a laugh that you suggest that very building.
Any further speakers? Councillor Maxine Callow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think on more than one occasion this evening, we've been told by the opposition not to keep looking back, that we've got to move forward and not keep looking back. And I think that Councillor Taylor bringing this up in the way that he has, he's tried to dilute Councillor Williams' wonderful notice of motion. Yes, the Conservatives did oppose the building of the sports hall in that position. We wanted it to go up to Moor Park next to the swimming baths. It would have been cheaper to build and cheaper to maintain. But Councillor Taylor has decided this evening to give us all a history lesson and to get, in my opinion, quite spiteful, I think, after your side have told us over and over again tonight to stop looking back and to look forward. And he may think it's been a great success. I'm pleased that people use the sports centre. I really am. But I still think it could have been in another position. But that's not what we're supposed to be talking about. We're supposed to be talking about an honour to a man who has brought great pride to this town, who has never done anything wrong. So why try to drag all this in, to try to dilute this wonderful notice of motion? Yeah. I think it's such a great pity, and I'm very sorry that Brian London has got engrossed now into this argument through no fault of his own. In fact, I doubt very much whether he knows that this notice of motion was going to take place. So, Madam Mayor, I am very sorry. The tone of this debate has gone, and I would hope that just for once that people vote with their hearts and they're not whipped into a decision of how they vote. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Sorry, Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
No.
Just looking at the past or looking at the future, I think Councillor Taylor makes a perfectly valid point. Over and above that, though, Councillor Mrs. Callow asks whether or not Mr. London, who is all of the things that people have said he is, an iconic figure in British sport, you know, who has great links with Blackpool, and I absolutely think it's right that those links are recognised and that we put on record how much we value his contribution to the town. But Councillor Mrs. Callow wonders out loud whether or not he even knows about this. Well, we know that he does. And we know that he does because without any reference to the local authority processes, Councillor Williams was quoted on the BBC website criticising the council for not having done anything about recognising Brian London. And his family gave a very measured response, saying that they were grateful that he'd been acknowledged, but of course these were matters for Blackpool Council, and they were absolutely right. We have, Madam Mayor, very clearly established protocols for the naming of council buildings. I hold an irregular meeting with the Leader of the Opposition and whoever the mayor happens to be at the time, where we discuss things which we hope we can achieve consensus on, so as not to cause any embarrassment to anybody. And all leaders of this council of years gone by will be familiar with that process. And Councillor Williams has sat in a number of such meetings with me. And we discuss things that we hope we can achieve consensus on, like aldermen, like Freeman of the borough, and like the naming of buildings. He hasn't raised this at those meetings. He's chosen instead to bring a notice of motion to the council after telling the BBC what his intentions were. I find that incredibly inept and embarrassing. The reason that more of these meetings don't happen more frequently is the number of occasions on which we have got agreement on something, and then Councillor Williams has reneged on that and attacked us publicly for something that we'd already agreed on in private, such as the fitting of a card system to the front door here. It's very, very difficult when the leader of one of the main parties on the council won't work in the way that the council works. And the way in which the council works is to have this conversation in private and to come to this chamber with an agreement. Because had Councillor Williams come to me about this, I would have told him that in the past, names have been proposed from one side or the other, including Bill Beaumont, Brian Larwood, Bill Woodhouse and Shelley Woods. And there's never, and more, and we've never been able to achieve cross-party agreement, so none of those have been brought here. The fact that he's decided to disregard that protocol and do this in such an embarrassing way is really a failure of leadership on his part.
Any further speakers on the motion? No? Councillor Williams to respond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of answers or a couple of questions. I'm disgusted with Councillor Taylor trying to turn his political argument as an yes, it is disgusting, into a political argument to snub Brian London. And one of the reasons, Councillor Blackburn, I didn't bring this to the Management Committee was because when I mentioned it to an officer, he said, I've spoken to Simon about it. He doesn't think his members will accept it. And of course you won't accept it. Not thought of here. This is a snub to one of the greatest sportsmen this town has. And I'm sorry if it's boring, Councillor Cross. It's the truth. And I have lots and lots of support, not only from residents in Blackpool, but from the whole of the boxing world. And I mean the whole of the boxing world. And I think the fact that you can't agree to this is an absolute disgusting snub, or whatever you want to call it, on Brian. And every single one of you should be ashamed. You say you represent Blackpool, you don't. You represent yourselves. Oh, come off it. Of course you do. If you'd have thought of it, it would have been a good idea, wouldn't it? But I didn't have thought of it.
Objection to the way.
You can object all you want. I'm sorry, Councillor Matthews. That's the way I feel. Brian London should be recognised. I think calling the sports centre after him, where he ran round it so much time, is the way to. Well, look, why didn't you put your hand up in the first place if you want to ask questions? I understood you wouldn't follow this, and I understood you wouldn't support it. And I'm, for one, at the moment, ashamed to be a councillor in this chamber. And Councillor Taylor, I think you should go home and say a few Hail Mary.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Thank you, Councillor Taylor and Councillor Williams. We have finished. We will now vote on the motion. All those in favour, please show. Against? The motion is lost. Thank you. Move on to 10B, Stand Against Race Hate Crime. Councillor O'Hara.
Oh, I am now. I brought this to the Council for the simple reason that the United Nations criticised the European campaign because it promoted hatred. We've got a problem with our media that seem to promote xenophobia. I don't think anybody could possibly argue against this, because what it says is everybody should accept what other people are, it's fairly straightforward. I could sort of argue for hours, and it's one of my passions, that people don't show any active hatred for anybody at all, and that all the things listed there. But I know Blackpool Council already are a diversity, inequality and diversity council, and that they fully support this, but it needs strengthening because the hate crimes since the European elections have gone up by 60%, which is why this motion is needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Callow.
Oh, sorry, I'd like to second and speak.
Oh, I thought you said yes. Sorry. Got to be quick here, Councillor Mitchell. It's getting late.
Thank you awfully, Madam Mayor, I think the expression is.
Sorry.
Just like to stand up against any hatred or unpleasantness. You understand that's my mission today. I'm delighted that this motion has been put forward, as it gives us the chance to renew our commitment to tackling racism and discrimination. When we became councillors, we all signed up to the Members' Code of Conduct, which imposes a positive duty on all of us to tackle prejudice. We need to demonstrate that commitment in practice. We're not just functionaries, we are servants of the people, and we have to represent the vast majority of the public who oppose hate crimes. Prejudice doesn't exist in a vacuum. It festers when nobody challenges it. It festers when the worst politicians use it for political advantage. We saw examples of this in the Brexit campaign: cartoon racism, victimisation of refugees, people using hatred as a weapon harnessed to personal political ambition. We all saw it, we all heard it, we all know it's true. I wish to make clear that I'm not tarring everyone with the same brush. People voted in and out for all sorts of reasons. But there was a group who used racism for their own ends, and there was a group who took the outvote as permission to do whatever they wanted. We've heard about the vicious attacks on people who look different or speak different. In the month following the Brexit vote, incidents of race hate crime rose by 60% from the equivalent period last year. I have to tell you that I've heard people say that the incidents aren't really happening and that people are exaggerating, that people put themselves through the stress and trauma of reporting hate crime for no reason at all. Well, I hope nobody's daft enough to say that tonight. Blackpool, like Britain as a whole, is a melting pot of cultures and traditions with a common humanity sustaining us throughout it all. Our town is a place which can bring out the best in anybody. We won't let our town be despoiled by a minority of thugs. The silence from the government on this matter has been deafening. We know how keen the government is to blame the problems they created on the victims, relating to job seekers, the disabled, ethnic minorities. They even blame some of the poorest countries in the world, which experience the highest levels of immigration. We can rise above this. And when refugees...
Councillor Mitchell, your time's up, thank you. Any further speakers on this? Right. Councillor Galley? Was it you? Oh, I'm so sorry. It's just automatic to say Councillor Galley, you know. I mean, no, seriously, I do apologise, councillors. My blurred vision is very bad tonight. I'm having trouble with this. It was Councillor Peter Callow that had his hand up.
I do support this motion, but I find it interesting because the first time I ran in Norbreck, I was resting against the railings there outside the school when one of the candidates, the Labour candidates, said to the other one, this guy's running rings around us. Then he had another look at me and said, mind you, he's a half-dead bugger on the rails. Okay, I've never forgotten it. Basically, that I wasn't going to last. Some people have said that before. Now, I was involved in a serious multiple car crash, not my fault, somebody else's, and I've had to live with that ever since. I also suffer from asthma, which I got when I was on the Ark Royal, when I served in the Fleet Air Arm, and this was through aviation fuel drenching me. But I'm not naming that person who said that, but I just find this rather funny. You can look up who ran against me then if you want to, and if you don't want to, don't bother. Okay, I'm not bothered. I'm not a half-dead bugger on the rails. I'm still here 17 years later or whatever it is. And hopefully, you know, I get this all the time. Somebody said, you deserve to be the mayor. Nobody better than you. But are you going to make it? Even when I go on holiday, you go through, you know, the checks and that. And one chap said to me, have you got all your own limbs? Well, yes. The last time they said, this wasn't long ago, can you take your own shoes off? Okay, so I have to put up with that, and I put up with this other thing as well. But I just find it strange that people are putting forward this notice of motion and they want to think about some.
Thank you, Councillor Callow. You didn't mind laughing at my poor eyesight, though, did you, Councillor Callow? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, of course we're going to support this motion. I'm just stunned that we've had to bring it forward. This should be in the Code of Conduct. It should be in your own ethos. Hate crime, well, you know, it should go unspoken. We should be this. But I would just remind anybody who might be a Jeremy Corbyn supporter and his far-left supporters that the anti-Semitism and the disgraceful Jewish remarks that they've made, if they support them, I'm not suggesting you do, but if you do, and you do agree to this motion, please stick by it. Thank you.
Councillor Clapham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was amazed that this was even brought to full council, because anybody who's a councillor here in Blackpool, in this chamber, if they were not supportive of the list that's built into this, they shouldn't be here anyway. There is absolutely no reason on earth or no connection with Brexit or any results of the referendum to do with people in here and this list. That is not part of our life. We believe in supporting disability, race, ethnicity, etc. Always have. It's just the right way to live. So you'll get all our support without any problem. And it's not a matter of being whipped, it's more a matter of being good, honest citizens.
Okay. Any further speakers? Councillor Ian Coleman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would agree that it shouldn't have to be brought in front of this council chamber, Madam Mayor. But unfortunately, we live in a world today where hate crimes are being committed every day. If you're different, you're hated by someone or some peoples or some groups of people. I have to say, I'm rather well known for looking after those who served in the forces. But I'm not a fighting man. I was in the Royal Army Medical Corps. I believe in looking after people, not hurting people. Yes, it should be brought in front of this committee, this council. Yes, this should be brought in front of every person in our land. There should be no hate in this country. If we can stop it, let's stop it. Man's inhumanity to man is diabolical. I do apologise for getting a little bit excited, but I think that we do have to use our hearts instead of our fists, our minds instead of our boots. Madam Mayor, please, I beg of everyone, support this motion.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to thank Councillor O'Hara for bringing this motion to us. I know he was contacted by a constituent, and he, well, maybe everybody was, but only one person actually brought it forward, which is why I'm thanking him. Okay? If that's okay, Madam Mayor. You know, traditionally people speak through you, but clearly now we do it directly across the chamber. So I want to thank, where was I? I'd like to thank Councillor O'Hara for bringing the motion and for his speech. And I'd like to thank Councillor Mitchell for seconding it and for his speech, in which he raises some very interesting points. And to pretend that, that the nation's decision to leave the EU was not used by a very small group of people as an excuse to perpetrate hate crimes based on the hatred which they had been carrying around in their dark souls for many, many years, is to simply deny a reality. One only needs to pick up a newspaper or watch a television news programme to see that sadly events like this happen every day. And to talk about all 41 people in this chamber being signed up to it is also to entirely miss the point, Madam Mayor. This is about what goes on in Blackpool, not about what happens in this chamber. And of course all of this stuff is in the Code of Conduct. And of course I expect every member of the Labour group, as I know they do, to live and breathe these values on a daily basis. That's why we all joined the Labour Party in the first place. What it is to do, Madam Mayor, is to make a public statement that we, as Blackpool Council, will be supporting the Lancashire Police and Crime Commissioners' Say No to Hate campaign in October. So there is a very clear and specific reason for bringing this here now. I'm disappointed but not surprised that Councillor Williams didn't get that, because it would probably have involved him turning the page. This is hugely important. Thank you very much, Mr Towers. It's very much appreciated. This is hugely important, Madam Mayor. I thank Labour members for bringing this forward. I hope we get not just wholehearted support tonight, but a genuine commitment from everybody in this room to live and breathe these values and to practice them in everything they do and say. And we will be making sure that that is the case. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers? We will go to the vote then. All those in favour of the motion, please show. Unanimous. The motion is carried. Right, 10C, the motion, state pension age for women. There has been an amendment put forward by Councillor Williams, I believe.
Councillor Wright needs to move it first.
So, yes, I'm just checking, has everybody got the amendment before them? Right, thank you. So, Councillor Wright, if you'd like to move your motion, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm just having to borrow Mark's iPad because mine's died on me. I don't think I need to say a great deal because I think Pauline and made eloquent explanation of the whole reason why I've fetched this motion to council. So I call upon the government to make fair transitional state pension arrangements for all women born after the 6th of April 1951 who have unfairly borne the burden of the increase of the state pension age. With lack of appropriate notification, this affects many women in Blackpool, and the Chief Executive is asked to write to the Secretary of State to outline the Council's position.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Williams. Councillor Lynn Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I fully support this motion. I'm conscious of the time, and as Councillor Wright has said, Pauline has really sort of gone through in addressing us a great detail the merits of supporting this. But I just want to make one further point, is that the women who are affected by this during their work life because of the social and economic conditions would either have not worked or worked part-time, but they would certainly be more likely to have been in professions that they would not have subscribed to a job's profession that would leave them with a good private pension at the end of it. So they are doubly affected and affected by this. So it is about the WASPI group is about, it is about equality. It's about equality, the fairness of notice and being able to deal with this. Because I know from talking with Pauline that the number of women that they've taken voluntary redundancy in expectation of them being able to claim the state retirement pension. So I fully support this, Madam Mayor, and I second it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Williams. If you would, yes, please, propose your amendment. Councillor Williams, can you switch your microphone on, please?
I'm sorry. The Labour Party in 2007 suggested that men's and ladies' pension age should increase to 60 years of age. 2004 should reach 66. So even the Labour Party themselves realised there's got to be some equalisation. Implementing that was never going to be easy. Somebody's going to lose along the way. How that's implemented is sincerely and seriously important. But this motion doesn't ask him to look at other things. It just tells him the way we feel. I want to see other solutions. And on the basis of that, I'm going to abstain from this motion. And I wish you'd accepted the amendment, because that really calls for some action. So, I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, that's the position, but I do understand it.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Do we have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Galley.
Brilliant. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Happy to second the amendment on the basis of Councillor Williams' concern that we do look for other alternatives as part of an economic solution to a very, very complex problem. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do we have any speakers on this? Can I remind you, you are speaking to the amendment only at the moment. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. The levels of confusion which exist on the opposition benches never cease to amaze me. Firstly, they clearly didn't listen to what Mrs. Duncan had to say when she spoke to us. They didn't listen to the emphasis on this being a cross-party issue, or on the fact that, you know, the Labour MP for Blackpool South has spoken in a parliamentary debate on this, and that the Conservative MP for Blackpool North has pledged his support for the campaign. They clearly didn't hear any of that, because what they've done is put forward what looks to me very suspiciously like a Conservative Central Office written amendment. Because there are some words in here that Councillor Williams just doesn't use. Okay, so quite where this has come from, I'm not sure. But it's a clear attempt to make it political. And what it also does is completely and utterly betray their ignorance over how public policy is arrived at. It is not the job of us in this chamber, or of a campaign of people who've come together on social media, or even of government ministers to decide what alternatives are considered. That is the job of the civil service. The job of the minister is to say, I have heard the concerns of the people and I want a solution which achieves this. So Councillor Williams calling for a debate around what suggestions there might be is a classic act of misdirection. It is to completely and utterly avoid the truth, which is that they don't agree with this. So they're moving some creatively worded amendment to try and mask the fact that they don't agree with this. I do wish sometimes that Councillor Williams would just have the courage of his convictions, and if he wants to say to Mrs Duncan and the many thousands of other women campaigning on this issue that he doesn't agree with them and that he agrees that there ought to be inequality embedded in the pension system, then for goodness sake have the courage of his convictions to say so. We've got the courage of our convictions. We support this move. We will support this motion. We will defeat your amendment. And the government will listen. And that's how public policy is made in this country, not the way that Councillor Williams seems to think it's made. If he'd have spent the day with policymakers today, as I have, he would understand that.
Any further speakers to the amendment? No? Councillor Wright, you have the right to speak.
Thank you.
To reply.
Thank you for that, Madam Mayor. I'm a little disappointed, to say the least, that they've tried to devalue the motion that was fetched before and sort of lessen it with including men and the Labour Party and this, that and the other, when it was cross-party, this. I mean, it clearly says there are 4,000 people in Paul Maynard's ward area that are affected by this. This must be some of your residents. I think it is shameful that you are not here trying to protect those poor women that have been unfairly discriminated against, instead of having... No, don't you mock like that. The point being is, I'm talking about these poor women that are missing out because they have worked 35 years of putting, you know, contributing towards it, and the government's hoping we'll all have popped our clogs by the time we're entitled to get it. So, you know, I'm very disappointed you all haven't thought about your own residents that are affected by this. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. We now put to the vote the amendment. No, I'm sorry, not to an amendment, Councillor Williams. Ours not to reason why. We'll vote on the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment, please show. All those against? The amendment is lost. Now, we'll take speakers on the original motion proposed by Councillor Mrs Wright. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Vitally important motion. Once again, I know a number of councillors were contacted about this. It was Councillor Wright who brought this forward. She makes her case very eloquently. This is a hugely important issue of fairness, and I know that Councillor Williams regularly mocks this council's commitment to fairness, and now we know why, because he doesn't believe in it. This is absolutely crucial. We cannot have a situation in the 21st century whereby women are treated in this way. I thought Mrs Duncan's speech was compelling. To be able to put some figures around this of, you know, a loss of income of £37,000, you know, what household in this town do we know of that could sustain a loss of income of £37,000 as somebody is reaching the end of their working life and looking forward to a retirement? It's absolutely ridiculous. It is not for us to provide solutions for this. That's for the civil service to do. Our job is to represent the voice of the people of Blackpool and the voice of the people affected by this, to make representations to government, to persuade ministers, to tell the civil service to go away and find a solution. That is what we are doing here tonight, and I'm sure that every member of the Labour group will support that. I'm also certain that people on the other side, if they haven't already decided what to do, will probably either abstain or vote against it, which is very disappointing. You know, you said, Councillor Williams, what you were going to do. I was asking a question via the Mayor as to what the rest of the group was going to do. Nearly 10 years in as a councillor, Madam Mayor, I note he's still struggling with basic matters of procedure, but I'm sure you'll be a very good teacher. Thank you.
Don't drag me in. Any more speakers? Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I said at the beginning of this debate tonight, a politician who has to revert to insults doesn't have a political argument. And it would just appear, and I don't know why, that every time Councillor Blackburn addresses me, and I'll get to the point, it has to be an insult. Don't know what he's worried about. I think I've already explained to Pauline, we do support your problem. But we want a solution, and that's what we're asking the Minister to look at the civil servants for, to find opposite solutions. And we're not asking that, we're just saying we're not very happy. I'm not very happy about it. But I don't see this motion getting him off his backside to do anything about it. It's as simple as that. So on that point, I will abstain. If the motion was asking him to talk to his civil servants, find a fairer way of doing this, a better way of doing it for everyone, then that's what we would support. And I'm sorry if that isn't the answer you want, but I think that's a sensible solution, despite all the insults that are aimed at me tonight. We do support you on what you're trying to do, but we want to see other solutions, because none have come forward. And we're stuck with what we've got. That's basically it, Madam.
Thank you. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To leave in to make fair transitional state pension arrangements says it all. I don't know why you're getting all wound up about it. I think we should put this to the vote now. I think we're all in favour of supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Councillor Wright.
If we're taking it to the vote, can I have a recorded vote, please?
Right. We're taking it to the vote now if there's no further speakers. We have had 5. In fact, we've had more than 5. You're all right. Right.
Madam Mayor, this is a recorded vote on the motion in the name of Councillor Mrs Wright. Please could members indicate their answer with either yes, no or abstain. Councillor Benson? Yes. Councillor Blackburn? Councillor Brown? Councillor CAIN? Councillor Mrs Maxine CALLOW? Councillor Peter CALLOW? Councillor Campbell? Councillor CLAPHAM? Councillor Debbie Coleman? Councillor Gary Coleman? Councillor Ian Coleman? Councillor Cox? Councillor Critchley? Councillor Cross? Councillor Elms? Councillor Galley? Councillor Mrs Henderson? Councillor Hobson? Councillor Humphreys? Councillor Hunter? Councillor Hutton? Councillor Jackson? Councillor Kirkland? Councillor Matthews? Councillor Maycock? Councillor Mitchell? Councillor O'Hara? Councillor Owen? Councillor Roberts? Councillor Robertson? Councillor Ryan? Councillor Singleton? Councillor Smith? Councillor Ivan Taylor? Councillor Luke Taylor? Councillor Lynn Williams? Councillor Tony Williams? Councillor Mrs Wright?
Yes.
Madam Mayor?
Okay, Madam Mayor, members have voted as follows: 28 for the motion, none against, 11 abstentions.
Thank you. The original motion is carried. And that completes our council meeting. And my apologies for my eyesight, folks.